Call to order the December 8th workshop. And first, as we go through just board members, I know we kind of just chat about this real quick. We're going to use the Granicus system for speaking, so just so that the public is aware of what we're doing with speaking as well. If at any time I miss or I go over, I will announce, here's the speaking list. But if I miss anything, please just say, oh, you missed me. So we're gonna use this system hopefully correctly. So with that, we'll start with the health insurance overview given by Mr. Wagner. Question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you want us to wait for any questions, let the presentation go, and then ask? Do you care if people ask in between?
It's flexible. I mean,
As
it's
things
a
are going?
workshop, so it's an informal setting for me.
Okay.
So if you'd like to ask questions as we go, that's
Okay.
fine as
I would like to say and make sure to all the other board members, this is something I have a concern with this morning. That's why I was talking to some of the attorneys and things. Some of the items in this presentation, some of the questions that we may have, ideas we may have, could be bargaining. Things that we should not be discussing in a workshop, that should be an executive meeting, that should just be us as a bargaining tool. I say tool, it maybe sounds negative, but a bargaining item. So I just want to make sure, if you ask a question, I've got the attorneys ready to go. I've got the gavel ready to go, just because I don't want to get into anything we shouldn't be getting into in a workshop, specifically. And if we've got any questions, I don't know all the answers. That's why the attorneys know that was my concern during the health insurance overview. So I know that they'll be ready to go for us. So just a heads up on that.
well. Okay, very good.
Mr. Wagner, it is
All right.
yours.
Chair, thank you. And I just have 6 slides, but I use these maybe more as talking slides, so what's on here will be expanded. All right. So we're just talking really about the 10,000-foot view, starting at the top. So we are talking about our health insurance fund. When people talk about health insurance funds for school districts, you really have 2 choices. You're either fully insured or you're self-insured. So on the screen, you're seeing just we didn't go through all 67 school districts, but we went through the ones that are working with one of our partners that they had information on. So what you're seeing is fully insured really are the 3 that are on the left, and the self-insured are on the right. You'll find in public education, many people have gone the self-insured route, and we're going to talk about why that's important and why we're doing that here in Manatee County. So, fully insured versus self-insured, what are some of the benefits and why would we choose to continue to be self-insured? And you can see them on the screen. Some of the important parts of this is that, well, we have been self-insured for a long time here in Manatee County. It really gives you the flexibility to design an insurance program that's really the best for your employees. So what does that mean? So it really gives you flexibility. There's more flexibility when you are in charge of your own insurance, when you're self-funded. And an example of that may be, for instance, like third-party providers such as Regenix. I'll just use that as an example. That's where they take the stem cells and they take your stem cells and inject them in your knee or your elbow or your hand. And so maybe instead of having a knee transplant or a shoulder, a new shoulder put in, you put the stem cells in first and see if that works. And if that does, then that makes it where the employee doesn't have to have a shoulder replacement or a knee replacement or hip replacement. And so it's better for the employee. They're not out of work. It's better for them as far as speedier recovery, and it's better for the plan because you're looking to instead of spending 6 or 7 times the cost, you're spending a smaller amount of money for a procedure. We have care coordinators. If you look on the back of your insurance card, Quantum, MyQ Health would be another. Quantum and MyQ Health are the same, and if you look on the back and you use them and you call them and they tell you, help you find doctors and help you find providers that are on our network, that are in the network. And so we offer our employees, we think, a better experience when they're being looking for doctors or needing medical concerns, that they have a number that they can call and somebody will answer the phone. And it's not somebody here locally, it's the professionals set up that do this for a living and have the best interest of our employee at heart as well. So it gives us more flexibility, and when you look at this chart and you look down at it gives you greater flexibility to provide a plan that best meets your needs of your employees. It also has where if you have rebates from your pharmacy, those go back into your to our plan as well, which saves us money also. So this is the route we've taken to be self-funded and as opposed to fully insured, and we do think it provides greater flexibility, so we can do that. Yes, sir.
Have we always been, I mean, I don't know the answer to this, obviously, but have we always been self-insured or?
So I can always be, that's a great question. I don't know about the whole history of,
Sure.
But for the 22 years I've been here, we have been self-insured. When you look at the numbers, and it'll come up on future slides, you look at the number of participations, we're at about 85% of our employees are participating in our health insurance. So that's a very high number when you start talking about industry averages. 85% is a lot. So people believe and feel that they have a good health insurance plan and participating as opposed to going elsewhere. So we do think it's meeting the needs here locally. So next, go ahead.
Mr. Wagner, Mr. Tatum.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. White.
Good morning, Mr. Tatum.
So since I'm new to the job here, I need to start learning maybe some of this terminology. Maybe you could help explain some to me. On the right side there where it says self-funded, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down, it says premium taxes assessed on stop-loss premium only. Do you know what that terminology means on the stop-loss premium?
So we do have a stop loss because right now, if you have a claim over $1 million, you have a stop loss on that. So if it goes over 1 million, once it gets to $1 million, then the stop loss kicks in and the insurance picks that up. So being self-insured, you want to have a stop loss so you don't have something happen where you have a $10 million claim, and next thing you know, that's bad. It's a $55 million fund. So they do assess the people who are self-funded. We have that. If you were to go with, let's say, Florida Blue, fully insured, or another agency, they're paying those claims. They don't have the stop loss. They're paying. They may have it on the backside of it, but you're not paying extra for it. That's just built into part of your cost when you pay your premium to whoever you have who's running your insurance. So for us, it's a concern. We do look at it every single year. We do evaluate it, and you can pick different levels too. People are like, well, why don't you make it 500,000? Why don't you make the stop loss 500,000? How about 750? Maybe that's a better deal. You can, but right now we're paying about $250,000 for the $1 million plan. The lower that goes, the more you pay. So then you have to look at historical. How many claims have you had that have gone above $1 million? Or how many claims have you had that go above 750? So they do look at the matrix to decide if this is the right stop loss for us. So we think it is.
So what I think I hear you saying is that we have some type of extra insurance such
We
that
do.
So there's
Yes.
we're self-insured, but then if a claim goes above a certain amount, we have an outside insurance company that pays that claim above $1 million.
They pick up all the expenses above 1 million, and our cost this year is 265,000. So that's what we pay out of our self-insured fund, which is about 55 million. We pay $265,000 for that $1 million of coverage.
But you're right, Mr. Tatum. Even though we're self-insured,
Yes.
we have an insurance policy for just that part of our insurance plan.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's important, and there's some that have it. Just saying, there's some that are self-insured that don't do that, that don't participate. They feel like they've never had a claim above $1 million. Why would you need it? It's just like when you buy
Home insurance.
your home insurance, your life insurance. If you have the umbrellas, some of us have that. You're like, do we need this? But we think we do because we want to protect our fund.
I mean, it sounds like a good idea. I'm not an insurance
Yeah.
expert, but I'm just informing myself. I'm not questioning the policy or anything.
No, but it's an important aspect of it. I'd be concerned if we didn't have it. I mean, it's an important aspect because what are you willing to put yourself at risk for? You could have it.
And with inflation out there, who knows, $1 million
Right.
may be coming up soon. How about the term claim run out? What does the term claim run
So
out? Is employer's responsibility? What?
Yeah, so the claim run out right now we're under claim run out is, we switched, before you came on the board, we were with Florida Blue, for many years, and we switched to Manatee, which is an Aetna, part of the Aetna provider, and so we are having claim runouts right now. So we're responsible for the claim runouts. They're running out on Florida Blue. They're not with us right now, but they're still paying claims. There's still people who had services done. They're still working on the billings with the docs and the hospitals, and so we're responsible for making sure all those get paid, of course.
Like,
Just because we
finishing
switched in
billing.
yeah,
So
and we
claim
switched
runout.
a year ago.
Claim run out means finishing up the bills. See, these are all insurance terms.
Yep.
It means finishing up the bills from last year.
Yeah, we're still liable for the bills, and they do keep coming in from Florida Blue, and they're trying to, of course, get them finished up, but they're still coming in. At the same time, you're having Aetna and Manatee, who we have now, sending their bills in.
Okay. And then ASO can be claims fiduciary. ASO stands for,
So the ASO is an acronym for Administrative Service Only. There are Aon is our ASO, for instance. So Aon is a company that is like an advisor for us, and they take what happens is when you get if I have life insurance or dental or vision, which I do, they take when you pay your premium, they get part of that funding to pay for their services. So we really don't pay Aon, but they come to our meetings each month, and they are our ASO, and they do advise us and come up with spreadsheets every month that shows how we're doing on the money, how we're doing on paying the bills, how much money have we spent. So they're our consultants per se. They're our ASO.
are they like a financial service advisor,
Yeah.
consultant that says, hey, here's your medical spending for the year, and here's where you might want to be, and here's where you are, and
Yes.
keep us kind of in line with our medical
Yeah.
expenditure budget? Is that?
Absolutely, and every month they give us a detailed report, and I have those for you as well, and we can talk about that here coming up also.
Great.
So they do provide a good service for us to help us manage our own insurance.
Thanks for making me smart.
Yeah, and when you go out for bid too, when you say, hey, we want to switch, what else is there besides Florida Blue? We've been with them for many, many years. Is there another company? They help with that process. How about if we want to switch pharmacy? Well, we did. We switched away from Elixir to Vintegra. They help with that process of getting it out in the market and making sure they're answering questions. So they really are, they're your consultant that's looking out for what's best for the district.
Thank you.
Okay.
By the way,
Yes,
hold on,
sir.
Ms. Wagner, you have a couple more, but you do have to click off of requesting once you speak. Sorry, I can't do it. I wish I did. Ms. Foreman had a question for you.
Quick
And then Ms.
question.
Bray.
When was the last time that we had any claims against the stop-loss insurance?
I want to say not often, so I'll have to get you the exact number, so I don't want to misspeak and say, yes, we have one. I do think we've had claims that are bumping up against that, getting close to that, and then it resets in January, and then you're back again. So to answer your question, I'm not aware of claims that we have had on there, but I am aware that we're right there.
Have we considered taking the insurance, the stop loss up to 2 million or 1.5 million, you know, to save on premiums?
We've not considered talking about pushing it higher. We have talked about pushing it lower, you know, like the 750. But then you look at the past data, and you're like, well, we've only had 2 of them that are above 750 in the last 3 years. Is it worth it to, you know, double your price to go down to that?
Okay, thank you.
So we've definitely not talked about pushing it higher, just because we're getting close.
Ms. Spray?
2 questions. Flexibility to add third-party best-in-class services. I'm guessing if there's a service out there that's not in the plan, that we have the flexibility to add that
We do, in
through
fact.
the year, not at the first of the year, but if something came up.
Yeah, so we do have the flexibility. A lot of times you hear, I'll just keep coming back to the example I gave at the beginning. We had heard about that for a while, the stem cell
Okay.
process. We've heard about that for a couple years, really. And we looked into it and kept asking for more data and asking for more and trying to make a good choice if this is something we really want to do. Does this work? Is this, you know, is it real? Is it really helping? So to answer your question, that's the most important part about self-insured is you do have the flexibility. You can do that, and that's can you add mid-year? Historically, we don't really add mid-year. You could, but it's getting the word out as part of the problem with all the employees, so many people on it. So we do like to add in January, and then we get the word out in October. We talk open enrollment, is it passive or active? So they hear about it come, you know, we can start advertising really in September. Hey, this is changing. This is going to be a good thing. Or this is going to be something new that we're pushing.
Okay. And then required to test and pass annually. I'm just kind of curious. Again, I'm not an insurance expert either.
Right, so the 11208 filing, so the 11208 filing at the bottom is a requirement for, a state requirement that they put out there that says if you're self-insured, you have to have enough for 2 months. So you have to have a reserve.
Coverage. Okay.
Yeah, it's
So
kind of like the
basically
school board reserve. You have to have a reserve, so we have to have a reserve in the health insurance of 2 months bills in your bank. And so you have to report that. Each summer we report that. But that's what we call it, the 11208 filing. And that's something that Aon helps us with. And that's something we do watch on the financials to see where we are and what cost savings can we push in place to, you know, make sure we're hitting that each summer.
Okay.
So how is it, so the next slide is how is it managed? So how do we manage it? So you have a health insurance committee. It's comprised of 12 stakeholders that help manage it because like Chairman Choke had talked about, it is a bargaining component also. So you'll see 3 members from MEA, 3 members from Ask Me, and 6 members from the district. So what you have at the bottom here is, you know, the 3, and 6 that are currently on it. This can be fluid. It can, you know, if somebody were to leave and you know, Mr. Bailey was just added to it. Mr. Bargeron just left. So that is fluid, but it's important that we do have monthly meetings. We do have Aon there also to present. We have Integra there. We have Manatee there. So you have all your stakeholders at the meeting to talk about how's it going this month. What are some of the concerns? If you hear about somebody, oh, they're not getting insurance, they're not getting the support they need. We hear, you know, sometimes you hear concerns. We go in and can address them right there with the people on the phone. Quantum and MyQ Health are there also. They're part of the meeting too. So all the stakeholders are in the room speaking, addressing the issues as they come up. Because here we're here to provide services to our employees and make sure they're getting the health care that they need. And some things bubble up. What's working? What's not working? What can we do better? How can we get the word out there? Every time you make a change, then there are lots of questions. You changed last January from Florida Blue to Manatee. Lots of questions from our community, you know, our stakeholders. So, but we've worked through those.
You've got some questions, Ms. Spray?
I do, just one real
And
quick.
Ms. Foreman?
Do you do a survey from the teachers and the staff that's covered to see, because you just said that you changed from Florida Blue to this. Do you get feedback on if it's better or worse than what they had before?
We get, so we have a benefits department that has 9 employees plus an administrator that oversees our benefits here in the school system. They're on the second floor on that side of the building. They hear from our employees if there's something not working. They're hearing from them. So to answer your questions, do we survey employees often about how healthcare is going? I would not say we survey them, but we sure hear from them. And if something's not happening, especially with people with their health care, I mean, I feel like we definitely know their concerns, and we work to address them.
Because that was one thing that was brought to my attention over the summer, was the change in the healthcare. And they kind of like the Florida Blue better, but I didn't know if you took those issues to this committee and presented that or not.
We did.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. And then let me just talk a little bit the 10,000-foot view level about, let's say, that company you named, Florida Blue, and why did you make the change? You know, why did we make the change? We had them for 13, 14, 15 years here in Manatee County serving us. Well, what happens is we have another, and keep it at a higher level, but when you start looking at the claims that are paid, so Florida Blue, if you go to the doctor and you have your wrist, something's wrong with your wrist, okay, and you have a standard procedure to fix your wrist, and it comes in at $100,000, okay, Florida Blue's job is to pay that, make sure we're getting a good rate and pay that claim, okay? So there's data out there called Deer Walk, and we mine that data to see how much the risk
Right.
thing cost. Well, the average is maybe less than $100,000. And so you would go back to your Florida Blue and say, hey, the average is less than 100,000. And it's not just this one for this individual, because we don't see the individual, we just see
Right.
for this one, but it's this one and this one and this one. So you start seeing a pattern. We've got to do better. We've got to get the cost down. You still go to the same doctor, you get the same services. The doctors are still getting paid, but we need to have a medical provider that works hard to keep those costs down too. We shouldn't pay above, and they use Medicare as a rate. We shouldn't pay 200, 300, 500, 1,000% above the federal average. So that's why we made the switch to say, hey, let's see if we can get a different provider in here and see if we can hold our plan so that we still pay all the claims, people still go to all the same doctors, they're still getting the same services, but maybe this company will do a better job of getting those costs back in line with what the average is, or below the national average. But we're not hearing, so when we made the switch and you heard about the summer, we did too. People are like, my doctor's not on the network, my doctor's not on the, and we worked through that and got their doctors on the network. So I'm not aware of anybody's doctor who did not get on the new new network. There might have been some small doctors that weren't on, they were picked up. That was part of the initiative when we moved it forward. We're gonna switch, but you all keep your same doctors. And more, and they have a bigger network or a different network or whatever it was. So to answer your question, yep, we did have some bumps in the road this summer once we made the switch. But I feel like we've ironed those out. So,
Yeah, during a couple of the, I took 2 of the FASB finance seminars, and in one of them, the discussion came up about health insurance committees, and some districts have a board member as a member. I threw this out to you before and said, just think about it, and I'm sure there's pros and cons on it. But I don't know that a school board member needs to be a voting member, but perhaps an observer.
and here's my comment on that. So I believe this is a management committee, just like we have lots of committees. We don't have board members going to those. This committee, however, will be making recommendations to the school board. They will come back and say, because this is part of the bargaining effort too. So I feel like it's not appropriate to have a board member in there because it very well may be coming to you, and it does when we do compensation, when we do raises, when we do negotiations. So it comes back to you as a voting member. So y'all are going to be the decision makers on what happens with our health insurance if we have to.
How would that be any different from other board committees? The audit committee and citizen financial, we have a liaison who sits in the meetings and they come back with recommendations.
Yep, so for the audit committee and the CFOC committee for the
But
millage.
there's insight to be gained by sitting in the meeting.
Yep, and I feel like those are, like CFOC and Finance Committee, those are board committees. Y'all set those things up. We need to have it. This is something we're gonna have, and so, y'all should be part of that, go to those and be there, like you are. But this is like a management this is a management committee where we're managing the health insurance fund, and we're bringing it, just like we have, bargaining. Y'all aren't part of the bargaining process either, but you
Ms.
are.
Foreman, the union is part of this committee.
Right, I see that.
The other two are board committees, but I do think there could be a conflict since the union sits on this committee making the recommendation to the board that the board votes on. And I think that's the why, is because who makes up this committee and the purpose of it. Now, I do think the board could request, since there are monthly meetings, you could ask for minutes of the meeting. And whatever reports are given, all the board could be getting that on an updated basis. But because it's comprised of the union and management, that goes to the board for vote for compensation. I'm not sure how that would.
Mr. Wagner, I would like to get the minutes regularly and the reports and I'm sure all of the board members, could
Let's do that.
put that on your,
I can. I brought the last 3 months because you did ask for those, so you have those, and I was
have
under the
those, yeah.
impression you all got those, but you didn't get those. So I've got the last 3 months for you, and we'll make the commitment to make sure you have those each time they come out. There's a lag, of course, of like 3 months from what it says in there to what the data shows. But that would be helpful, so you could see those every month and get
so if we
those
could have
coming.
those and the minutes.
Yep,
Because I haven't seen the minutes, but.
yep.
Mr. Titlebaum?
Thank you, Mr. Choate. I just want to add this one factor to it. There are times in bargaining that this issue could be an issue that could lead to impasse. So technically, we could have issues with conflicts of interest with the board members because you will ultimately go to a cone of silence as well. So I just want to put it out there that if there's an impasse related to this issue, having a board member on this committee could be extremely problematic with the negotiating unit.
That's fine. Hey,
Yeah, and it's listed in the MEA contract. Somehow it became in there who's the representative of the HIC.
no, as long as
they-
we're informed.
Okay.
That's what we're after.
Our commitment is each month minutes and financials, so you can see them, and we can talk about how to read them or, go over them with you also as well.
Mr. Tatum? And then Ms. Smith.
Good to talk to you again, Mr. Wagner. Thanks for being here today, by the way. I know I kind of feel like we're grilling you, like, what's going on?
Well, that's all right. I still have 4 more slides.
But as a new board member, I'm just trying to become more informed. So circling back to the question of changing healthcare providers, it sounds like and I don't know the bureaucratic process, and I've been in enough bureaucracies to understand what seems that it might be able to be done, can't necessarily be done because of the way the system works. But is there a way, for instance, let's say we change healthcare providers again, instead of being reactive and telling, and then, I have to go to my doctor every month because I have whatever health issue going on, and I show up on February 1st for my monthly visit, come to find out my doctor is no longer in the, and then I have to call your office, and it takes 2 months, and finally in April, like, my doctor's back in the plan, or I'm just, I mean, if we know we're gonna change, can we put out a message to the employees that say, do they have, so that has happened, and do they have an opportunity to try and get their doctors in the system? So that's happening.
We did it. We did that. We did put
Sorry to
that
interrupt,
out.
we did it from the very beginning, correct?
We did.
Before
from
we
the
moved
very
any
beginning.
changes.
But then people didn't go to their doctors till, like you said, till maybe April, and we made the change in January, then they didn't realize that they weren't on it. But we did take the list of every docs we had, gave it to them, they plugged it in. But there were those outliers who went to a doctor in, they live in Tampa. So their doctors are in Tampa, or they live in Pasco and Pinellas. They live outside of our range, so they're up. So some of those are harder than we had anticipated. But we're not anticipating changing our medical or pharmacies
Okay.
anytime soon. So this is interesting, and again, we're just at the 10,000-foot view. So what is it? What's on the screen? So you have 3 levels of insurance: bronze, silver, gold. It's showing the number of lives enrolled in this rate schedule. The total monthly rate is a combination of the employer and the employee contribution. The far right-hand side is really what your employee is responsible for paying. So when you hire somebody and they come to us and they're a single person, they just have themselves, they're paying $32 for their insurance. The employer, you, school district, the healthcare fund is paying $493 for their insurance. So this is a monthly rate. So they're paying $32 a month for their insurance. So family then is family on the bronze. Employee contribution is $515, and the employer contribution is more. So it's just, this is more just an FYI so you can see it.
Question for you, Ms.
Yeah.
Mayor. Do we have the data? I know this is broken up: bronze, silver,
Gold.
gold. So the different levels, obviously, of care that you want to select. Obviously, employee, spouse, employee plus spouse, children, family. I get all that. And maybe I'm just not seeing it. But do we have broken up, regardless of what bronze, silver, gold, regardless of what level? Do we have broken up where we can see? I'm sure we do, and if we could get this, it'd be great. How many just employees by themselves do we have, regardless of what level they're in? Bronze, silver, gold. How many employee plus spouses? How many employee plus children? How many families? Right. So, is there a way we can get that? I mean, I know you don't have that right now in this presentation.
I didn't think
And that's
that,
fine.
But that's a good point. So for bronze, you have 1,887 enrolled.
Right.
Your question is, how many are in the family?
Yeah, are all
We have
1,887 in family? I mean,
Yep.
obviously that's probably not, but
Yep.
you get what I'm asking. That would be good to see, just to know. And again, that I'm not going to go any further to why. I think just that'd be good to know.
No, let's do that. Let's do that. There, people have asked, why can't the employee be subsidized? The 6%. Why can't that be across the board? Why can't you make that across the board? Well, you're subsidizing your employee at a higher rate than you are their family, for good reasons. First of all, it's been like this for many years. And it's more costly to, of course, if you were to put 6% all the way down on this column for everybody. That's just how it's broken out. It's been negotiated that way. It's part of the negotiation
That's
process.
something I don't want to. But Ms. Messenger does have a question.
I do, and I'm going to dance around it as much as possible because I think it really could be a bargaining issue, so I don't want to delve into that. But I do want to ask, because he did kind of ask a question about each group. Has there ever been a consideration, and maybe don't answer this because maybe that will be a bargaining issue, has there ever been a consideration for an employee plus an employee plan? And I ask that for recruitment and retention purposes, because if someone is working here and they go, hey, look, I can save $300 if you come work for the school district with me, that could be a recruitment piece. Now, I'm going to look at it from that angle, not the bargaining piece, because that could really end up becoming a bargaining thing. But I guess my question is, has that ever been a consideration? And, or maybe you can't answer that even, but maybe I'm asking for that to be a consideration.
It could, yeah, to answer your question, I don't know, because since I've been here as part of this, we've not talked about that, but it could be. I mean, it could be but then the question would be back to you to say, well, they start that way in January, but then the spouse goes to work in another company. So once they enroll, now what? Do they get that benefit for the whole year at our expense? That's how it would be. Or is it, because you can't, once you enroll, that's it. Now, you could drop them off maybe. But I'm saying, so there's lots more details when you start thinking about that.
Sure, but that's something that would occur no matter which one they were in. If somebody stopped working here, it would change.
Well, they would drop.
I mean, if somebody gets divorced, that changes their plan. If somebody passes away, that changes their plan. I mean, there's lots of other ways that the plan would get changed, and I'm sure that we could negotiate that or work that out. I think for families or employees, that would be an additional benefit. Not only that, then they would have whatever their maximum deductible would be for the year. When they're on two separate plans, because they're employee and employee, they're having to hit that in both plans. Whereas if it was a combined one, I think it would my only point is, I think it's a good recruitment piece. It would, I think somebody would say, oh, hey, honey, you can come work here too. And look, we're going to be able to consolidate this. We're going to be able to save that. That's it.
Yep, no, I hear you. And then remember though, if you have a spouse, you could be two employees. They have their separate insurance, so you could have your own insurance, and your employee could have their own insurance also.
That's true.
Still
but
be
then you're
here.
having to meet, each of you has
Yes,
your own
deductibles.
set of deductibles to hit every year. Whereas if you were combined, they would have the one. Which once again, I think that would help recruit, bringing more people in to have their spouse also work for the school district.
Good point. Point well taken. So those are your three plans. Obviously, as Ms. Messenger had talked about, a lot of it depends on the copay, the deductible. The levels are higher copays, higher deductible as the further down you get on your insurance. But we're back to kind of like the stop loss conversation. How much insurance do you need? What do you need insurance for? Are you always in the doctor? Are you never at the doctor? So which plan's best for you? So some of them like a higher deductible, but a lower monthly premium.
Ms. Foreman has a question.
I just want to draw attention to the comment on the bottom of that slide that contributions have remained unchanged since 2016.
Pretty good.
Just
And that's it.
just want everybody to see that. So
Yes, that make that more clear. That should say employee contributions.
Ms. Messenger.
I don't, I lived through that. I lived through that impasse when we had to impose that. So I have no desire to do that again.
when we
Yeah,
get to the
I think
finance,
I think again. Sorry to interrupt.
well, it's just when we get to
I
the
just
finance,
don't wanna
I
get-
think you'll see that.
I think we're getting kind of close. Are we getting kind of close?
No, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about. I'm
No,
talking
I know-
about
I know
the
you're not.
financial. I'm
No, I know
talking
you're not.
about, and that's not collective bargaining. I'm just. So.
Right. So
Go ahead.
we'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, you
I
can.
agree. I mean, and I hear your thing about the two employees. Yep. So we got that written down. So this is a snapshot, really, from.
Ms. Barber is here. That's
Barbara, you're here. Awesome. Right.
came back from Orlando to be here.
Oh, thanks.
All right, well, thank you. So this presentation was going to include Miss Barbara as well, but she was.
Okay. Well, whenever-
leaving. So did you just walk in a second ago?
Yes.
I did, sir.
Okay.
Your eyes in the back of the head didn't catch
All right, very good. So, so this is a revenue snapshot, and it's more than a revenue snapshot. It really gives a lot of good information on here. So, talk about the average number of employees who are enrolled. So we have like almost 4,800 employees enrolled in our plan. We had talked before, that's about 85% of our employees who are eligible are participating. We talked about that's actually a pretty high number. That is a high number for the industry to have 85% enrolled. The number of dependents, you have almost 4,000 dependents, and they're almost about the same number of dependents as you do employees. So we're looking at 85, almost 8,600 lives are in part of our insurance plan. The board share is $34 million that they put in. We have put in ESSER COVID reimbursement at the time of this snapshot. So this was year closeout last year. So it was 2.6. Currently, our correct number is, and is changing, is about $8.5 million that has been pushed in from our ESSER funds. So how is that possible? So it's possible because the state of Florida allows districts to use the state ESSER funds from COVID to push into self-insured plans. And so we have data from Florida Blue that shows, how much have we spent. So we spent about $11 million for COVID for the school district of Manatee County since COVID has hit us. So we put in about $8.5 million. So technically, there's still a little bit more room, but that's what we have put in, year to date is about $8.5 million. The employee share is, 13.6 million. It really goes back up to the previous slide to show which employees, which group's putting in more. Gold family plan, of course, puts in more than bronze single, but that's the way it goes. So there's about 13.6 million put in there. So the total collected is about 51 million. Again, this is end of year last year. It's about 56 million now. And then we break this out into total net claims, medical and pharmacy. Those are lumped together. Really, it's about $17 million for medical, or for pharmacy. It's about 17 million, and about 25 million for medical. So it's about 17 million for pharmacy. Administrative costs, so fees and expenses, that's really, there are fees associated with Florida Blue and Manatee, and so those are the fees that are collected. So the total plan cost is about $56 million. And at the time of reporting this, we had about $8.7 million. These numbers are fluid, and when you get the monthly report that has the financials in it, you'll see these, and you'll see how they change each month also, and you'll see employer contributions, employee contributions, how much we're getting billed for people go to the doctor. And just because they go to the doctor in January doesn't mean you're getting billed in February for that bill either. Sometimes those things lag a long time. We had talked a lot about Manatee and Aetna. We did used to have Elixir, and now we have Integra. Why did we make the change? We talked about Manatee and Florida Blue, but Elixir was made. Osceola started that. They get the credit for starting that as a public school. They went with Integra. It's a non-for-profit pharmacy. We call it a PBM, Pharmacy Benefits Manager. The rebates are coming back to us. We should get over $1 million this year for our fund from rebates. So when you get your medicines at the Publix or wherever you're getting it, there's a rebate that goes back to the pharmacy, and then instead of the pharmacy keeping that or going somewhere else, it comes back to us. So we are going to get pharmacy rebates this year also. And at the bottom, it's we're required to have, as we talked about before, 2 months in reserve, 60 days of claims. By June 30th annually, you have to report it to the state on a special form.
Mr. Wagner, we do have some questions.
Yes.
Ms. Messenger, and then Mr. Tatum, and then Ms. Foreman.
I just had, I couldn't remember, I know we've had Aon come before us before and present information, but I couldn't remember, did Aon have a recommended percentage for the employee share versus the employer share? Is there any kind of recommended, like, this should be 15% or?
No, they don't, because back to the how much are you paying for the family versus the single, those are gonna be different and remain different. So it would be hard to say it, because what happens if everybody's on the family? Or all of a sudden most people switch to the employee only. You know, you saw that's the smaller one,
Okay,
as far as how much they're contributing. So that would be hard to, so to answer your question, the easy answer is no, they don't recommend it. They don't have a recommendation.
okay, thank you.
Chair?
Yes, I'm gonna try and use my amateur accounting skills here real quick, so I know we have a CPA up here. But it looks like, I mean, just looking at the numbers, it looks like we ran a deficit in 2021. And if we had not had the ESSER funds, so the deficit was like 4.7 million. Had we not had the ESSER funds, it would have been 7.3 million. So is that concerning at all that we ran a deficit last year? Are we running a I'm just, again,
Yeah.
doing the math, so to speak.
Yeah, no, so the answer is that's something that comes up at every meeting. We do talk about that, because you do have to hit that, and you don't want to have a plan that doesn't have money. COVID was a surprise, no one knew it was coming, so you couldn't pre-plan for it. The state saw it too, that's why they gave the ESSER funds and said, yeah, you could use them for this purpose, because every district is going to be in the same huge costs that there was no way for them to predict or forecast. Even our consultants couldn't forecast COVID. So to answer your question, yes, it's a concern. Yes, we do watch that. And yes, that's why we made the change from Elixir to Vintegra, from Florida Blue to Manatee.
Are we doing better this year? Are we running a deficit? Or-
We are running a deficit. Right now, we're running a deficit, but it's also on their, so they're forecasting, so they forecast based on statewide averages as well, how many people get sick, what are they getting, what medical procedures they're having. For instance, that's why at every meeting, we talk about what are we doing for cost savings to still provide the highest medical care possible for our employees, but also save costs. Right now, we're coming up with an initiative for shifting. It's a new method for optimizing our specialty drugs. There's some specialty drugs are very costly, and we're changing the method on how those are going to be distributed starting in January. And employees have been contacted, and they still can get the same specialty drugs. They're still going to get their prescriptions filled, but they're going to have to go through direct to the manufacturer. So it's going to take a little bit of paperwork on their part, but we do think by making that, just that little change, direct to manufacturer, so there is no middle person in there taking out percentages, we think we can save, these are rough numbers, we think we can save, $9 to $13 million annually. I mean, that's huge.
Mr. Tatum, part of the issue with insurance is you can never completely 100% forecast what those expenditures are. COVID was an extreme expense, and Mr. Wagner has one of the slides. This year, we've spent $11 million on COVID claims. So part of the reason that we have more cost is because of COVID. Now, we don't move all those monies in, we shore it up at the end, because we don't want to take more funds from ESSER to move into insurance until we have to, because we can use them for other things as well. But we have up to $11 million that we can offset our insurance claims with our ESSER expenses. Our goal always is to keep cost as low, not to use any more district money than what we've already budgeted, because that's what we budgeted. If we spend more than what we have district budgeted, then that's an issue, because we've got to go back and amend our budget, right? So if the costs exceed either what our contributions are or what the district has planned, then we all have to go back to the drawing board in an executive meeting and figure out how we're gonna pay that differential. So our goal monthly is how can we keep costs down so that employees are not having, if we give them a raise, but yet you're paying hundreds of dollars each paycheck more for your insurance, then we've really not given them any more money. So our goal is to come up with cost-saving measures, provide great health care, and one of those things Mr. Wagner will explain, but also make sure that the district is not breaking the bank by health insurance either. So we do have an $11 million offset that we can easily do.
And those are ESSER funds, is that?
Those would be ESSER funds. We can use all or part of that, but we'll wait to see what all the claims and everything is at the end of the month. We'll shore that up because like he said, the school year ends in June, the insurance year ends in December. So we'll finalize and reconcile all of the claims and the cost. We can easily move that money over there, but we all know that ESSER ends in the fall of '24. COVID is still going to be with us, probably not at that same level. And I do believe we did have a claim during the first year of COVID that we had to use our stop loss insurance in. But Mr. Wagner is going to get that information. So the COVID costs have been a major factor in the expenditures of our insurance. So one of the things the insurance committee did, yes, we changed our providers. We put it out for bid after 15 years to help with cost. But Mr. Wagner is going to go over two other things we're going to put in place next year. One of the things that we thought would be done by January, only because it was lofty, was our employee clinic. Well, we've approved it. It's coming. It's not going to be ready till August. But when you're anticipating cost-saving measures, you're factoring that in. It's coming. It's just going to be a little delayed. So it's like anything. You make a plan and you budget, but you have to have monthly meetings because if you see problems, you have to address the problems accordingly. And COVID was a big one, a big expense. But until the fall of '24, we do have monies to offset that extra money. And as Ms. Messenger stated, if you have to go in and change rates, and I'm not saying that that's not a thing that we may not have to look at in the future sometime, whatever, that has a major impact on employees' compensation. Because you can say, I'm going to give you a 4% raise, but half of that's going for your insurance or your, even though we know insurance is compensation, no one looks at that as money in their pocket, right? You got to have it, but you really don't want to pay more than what you have to pay for. So I'll let Mr. Wagner go over, and then I know Ms. Barber's here too. So
My concern, first of all, I just want to make the point that I'm sure that competent people are watching this within the system, as you're telling me right now. I guess what I saw was the fact that we ran a deficit last year.
You're correct.
And we're running a deficit this year.
You're correct.
And so is somebody doing something about it? And I'm sure they probably are. It reminds me a little bit, and again, I was on the outside when I saw this, but was it last year where we had the substitute teacher issue, and all of a sudden at the end of the year, it was like, hey, we've been paying all the substitute teacher money out, and we don't have enough money for substitute teachers. So it sounds a little bit similar to that, like, hey, we're running a deficit 2 years in a row. I just want to make sure that I understand the fact as someone who has fiduciary responsibility, as a board member, that 2 years from now we're still running a deficit.
Yeah.
I just want to understand.
Fortunately, we have monies there to move. We're just waiting to see how much of that 11 million we need to move over completely to take care of that COVID expense.
Sure.
So if we didn't have those dollars there, we would have all had to have an executive meeting before now to talk about it, because you can't be in the hole.
Right.
We've got money to cover, it's just sitting in another bucket right now. So we'll figure out out of that total 11 million, I think one of the sheets showed we had moved like 2.5 or something. We've got many more dollars that we can pull over, but right now that is one of our methods, but that can't be the only method, which is why he's gonna go over some other strategies we have to save money. Because in 24, that's no longer gonna be available. Even if you have COVID expenses, that's great, you got expenses. There's no federal dollars to compensate for that. So that can't be our method of correction
Every year.
every year. That ends after next year.
And one last question, real quick, is the health fund balance, is that the reserves that we're required to have, 60 days of reserves, or is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and so we're not gonna tap into that to pay
Oh, you can't.
deficit?
You
No,
can't.
you can't.
So you tap into the ESSER funds is what I
Yes,
hear.
we tap into the ESSER.
And that's my point, is
Yes.
I see this coming, and I'm sure somebody competently is watching this, but the ESSER funds will end, and
In
then what?
24. So you've got one more year of that being available, but it won't be available after 1 year. So there have to be other measures, or everybody goes back to address how we're funding our insurance.
Thank you
Yeah.
for the clarification.
So the slide did show the, work
We have
on
some
what
more
she.
questions.
Okay.
Ms. Foreman.
Okay. I thank you for this. About the
Thank you
COVID.
for the warning, because then you did ask for it, yes, last night, so we were able to pull it together. And again, that's the date on that is really,
I see that.
well, all right, so, but that's what we could get in short notice.
The paid all services, the $11 million, this says that that's exclusive to people who had a positive COVID diagnosis. So does this include, like, if a COVID positive person 6 months later breaks their arm? Is that included in the $11 million?
No.
No.
Okay, you are
Only
able,
That would be a
COVID
different-
direct.
you are able to
Illness.
designate the services related to COVID as
Right.
opposed.
That's the only way that they calculate it. It has to be directly related to
Okay.
COVID illness only.
And I assume that you have to report it to some powers that be, that how we're spending the ESSER money, so.
Oh, yeah, you have to get it.
Part of the
approved.
audit as well.
Right,
Yep.
okay, I'm just, clarifying on that. As far as the, the deficit and the reserve, we all do have that information. This is for the year ended June 30, 2021, which is old, probably not that relevant. I mean, that's 18 months ago. In the ACFR, which we've all received a copy of the draft, there's a deficit of $8.7 million. And before they moved in $5.5 million from ESSER, which still leaves a deficit. They've still reduced the reserve. And then October 31, the financial statement that is going to be presented at the next board meeting, we're showing a deficit there of $9.6 million year-to-date. That's just from July 1 to October 31. Additionally, the net ending position, that reserve, is $1.8 million. So I assume more COVID money is or more ESSER money is going to have to come over. So it is very, very concerning. This is, I'm very concerned, okay? I'm just going to leave it at that. And we can, for years, we have been tweaking, we have changed insurance, we've changed process for insurance, we've changed, or for prescriptions. We've implemented a wellness person. We're doing everything we can, but how much can you squeeze the toothpaste, tube? It's, I see it a problem, and that's why I asked about sitting in on these meetings, at least until finances are in better shape, because this is a problem.
So,
Just-
yep,
Board needs to understand
Go
that.
ahead, Ms. Barber.
This is the nature of self-insurance. If we had a fully insured plan, we would have no control over any of this. the insurance company would just impose the rate increases on us so that they continued to make a profit. We're a nonprofit. When, in 2016, when the board imposed a huge increase on our spouses, we collected too much money, and our fund balance in the health insurance fund got too high. So we decided mutually between management and the two unions to spend that down. And that's why we haven't had any rate increases. Then when we realized how fast our expenses were going up, we started making changes to our plan to adjust to those claims increases. We have successfully done that. The deficit is that we're spending more than we're taking in, but we still had our fund balance, right?
When you say a fund balance, what,
The reserve.
but I thought
The
we
reserve.
couldn't tap into that, that's what I was.
We have been spending that down because we had so much in it.
It was more than
We had way too much money in it. And so instead of imposing premium increases, and I'm talking about we because we have a shared interest in having a solvent health insurance fund. And that's why we have a joint committee. It's a subcommittee of our collective bargaining, because you can probably already see that this is way too complicated to do at the negotiations table, and we have to do it constantly. We have to constantly watch and manage this fund. So we have consultants who advise us and who present options to us of ways to do this and how to manage this plan. $13 million savings in specialty drugs is going to help us a lot. It's going to help us tremendously. So that is one of the things that we're looking at. 3 months of a employee clinic will help us a lot. And we have 2 other things that we're looking at and implementing for next plan year. So yes, we are going to have a premium increase sooner or later. But while we're in this current inflationary times, I'm not sure that's the time unless that's what comes to the table. I mean, because, we have to agree on those things. But we're looking at other things that we can do besides doing that. But it's a constant thing because we're self-insured. And that's how we keep from paying the health insurance, the big health insurance companies, to make a profit off of our plan, is that we manage it ourselves.
Yes, Emma.
Yeah, I had actually 2 more points to follow up on that. I mean, even Medicare increases every year, and that's nonprofit. But I want to point out that in Aon's report from the last month, they state the self-insured medical and pharmacy plan is running a deficit of $2.3 million to date. And that is after the district has moved in during the calendar year $6 million. So Aon is, alerting us as well to a deficit. And if we're, I hate to see us, I love seeing us making the changes that we can, okay? As long as we're not taking away coverage
Right.
from our employees, because some of these drugs are just crazy expensive. But I don't want to predict the future either. So,
No, that's the actuary's job. That's the actuary's job.
Right.
can the actuary predict savings on?
That's yes, that's what they do.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly what they do.
But
They
that-
tell us that if you implement this, we predict that you will save this much.
And just for clarification, because that one, like we talked about, that lags the reality, those reports, because they're slow to bill us and slow to pay for some things. But the specialty drugs alone, that starts in January. So that's going out there. It's December, so that hasn't started yet. So that estimate from Aon doesn't have it in there, and we do think it will be, 10 to $13 million annually. And even if we capture it for half of a year, we still could be
So
talking.
we'll be able to evaluate how it's
yeah.
doing.
Come June
We do
30th,
it
we
every
should know.
month,
Yep.
monthly.
Yeah.
We do that
Well,
month.
but we will shore up at the end of December, all ESSER claims for COVID, those dollars will roll over. So we will shore that up. So that'll change part of the landscape. We just wait till the end of the calendar year for that. We'll move more monies over there.
The comments on the EMR from Aon are the same as what I described. Their revenue over expenses is what they're describing as the deficit, not that we don't have a reserve.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, I.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But our financial shows a $1.8 million reserve at the end of October, which we're gonna have to build back up before June 30th.
We will have that reserve because of the stopgaps that we're putting in place.
Ms. Spray.
Okay, a few things actually. When you say the ESER funds are gonna stop in 2024, you mean January 1st, 2024?
No, it's the fall of '24. September of '24 is when the ESSER funds, that grant cycle ends.
Okay, because I'm like, okay, is that the calendar year for
Right,
insurance?
right. Yeah,
or-
grants are weird. They start in October, so you have until September of '24.
Okay, and then the health fund balance says, on your slide says 8.7, however, the statute says 9 million is an estimated based amount on claims, so we are.
So those are flexible, so you're right, by June 30th, and those are flexible, so we're saying 9 million kind of as a placeholder, but it's really 2 months claims. What happens if, all of a sudden the trend is down and our claims are not, our 2 months is 8.5, then we'd have to have 8.5 million. What happens if our claims are 9.5? You have to have 9.5. So it's kind of a fluid number. It's not a set in stone. What is set in stone is 2 months. You have to have 2 months reserve.
2 months, okay.
And in January 1st, we're putting in things to help build up that fund.
So would it be a fair estimate to say that by changing over to this new company that we're actually going through a growing pains over the first year?
We
Is that,
definitely had growing pains.
okay, yeah, because that's what it's looking like to
We
me.
had a lag of 4 months before we could actually tell what our claims were gonna be because of the lag in processing those claims. So we're just starting to see what that's really gonna look like.
Okay, and then the slide that we were given handed paper, all of these were on our insurance.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is from our insurance company.
okay,
This is a report from the insurance.
from Florida Blue, okay. Because I'm curious at how much of this, some of our employees, I'm sure, went to get tested at the drive-through. That doesn't reflect these, correct?
There's no cost for that. So
Right.
This is only what cost our plan money.
That we paid for. We paid the bill on these, and Florida Blue was
Right,
our
I'm just
provider.
asking, did we actually recommend our staff to, if there's a free test out there, go take it instead of going to the doctor?
Yes.
Okay,
We tried to do that.
Because that's a lot of money here.
People try, if they go to their doctor, they can also ask their doctor for the prescription that helps them get over it faster. That's a little more complicated than just getting tested.
Okay,
Yeah, we do. We did push out lots of information to try to help our employees.
Including our clinics. We have 2 student clinics that our employees could have gone to get tested too. So.
okay. Those were my questions, thanks.
All right. very
Mr.
good.
Trader?
Two quick points. First of all, I'm generally not a fan of belaboring things in meetings, but this is to me, this is one of the primary responsibilities of the board. This is millions of dollars that we're talking about. We're talking about employee compensation. So number one, I do want you all to know and the public that I believe that healthcare is very important for people. Healthy people make better employees. So, but I need to make sure I understand how this is working right now. So I'm thinking about it again with my amateur accounting skills. We've got a checking account and we're paying money out of that, but we've also got a savings account. So we're using both to pay our bills for healthcare. Luckily, someone is sticking more money in our savings account every month, these ESSER funds, or every so often. But soon, within 21 months from now, in the fall of 24, that extra money that's coming in our savings account isn't going to come in anymore. And we've spent down our savings account to the point where there won't be any more money coming in, and we are at the point where we can't spend the account down anymore. Am I understanding how it's working correctly?
It's not quite that simple because there's constantly money coming in.
Right.
And there's from different sources, because there's money coming in from premiums, there's money coming in from rebates, there's money coming in from our contract with our providers for certain things. And so anything that we don't spend also rolls over into that reserve account, so.
We're running deficit, I would just like to get out in front of this.
Yes.
And it doesn't sound like we have a plan when the ESSER funds go away. And maybe now is the time to start having meetings to discuss this.
Can I just say one thing? Yeah, I would say we do have a plan. They just haven't gotten to it yet. And I think, the plan is trying to do those things to save dollars, to save costs. One was obviously the going directly to the manufacturer for the expensive drugs. Two would be, we'll see the clinic here in a second. I think that the problem, I don't think anybody, I agree with you, we look at this and it's deficit, deficit, deficit. I don't think anybody looks at this and says there's not an issue. I think we see it. We're trying to do and Miss Foreman had a good example of squeezing the toothpaste. How far can you go? We're trying to do everything we can that we don't have to go back to the bargaining table and say we got to increase. I mean, let's just be honest. That's what we're trying to do. And I think that's what some of the plans are that you have in place. And we've got till September 2024 to see, are these things going to work and help us save dollars? And hopefully they do, so that we don't have to go back and say, hey, great, you got to raise, but we're raising your rates on your health insurance. So I think that I do think that there is, we see it. And the easy one is that we just got to get more money in. Well, let's see if we can fix savings and save somewhere instead of getting more money in from somewhere, which would be our employees.
Well, and we're trying to also avoid having to shift any more money that the board pays in from the board's budget either, because the board's contribution to health insurance as well as the employee's contribution to health insurance are both negotiable. So honestly, we'd rather put that money towards salaries and not have to negotiate that the board pays more either. So, it's trying to maintain the status quo at premiums and find other ways through innovative programs to save costs without lessening our health insurance.
I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Did you have any other questions before I go on to the next one? I'm sorry.
Just let's try and it sounds like we're trying to get ahead of it. I'm assuming that there are competent people working on this problem, but it is concerning when I see deficit, and my amateur accounting skill is we're paying, these accounting terms, we're paying reoccurring expenses out of potentially non-reoccurring funds, and generally that's not a good idea, and we should get as far ahead of that as we can to make sure that it doesn't become a problem. But it sounds like we are, and I'm new and I'm learning. So
yeah,
all parties involved in the health insurance committee are in 100% agreement with that statement.
Okay.
Agree.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I just want to wrap up. I would propose that we evaluate it again in June 2023 before the next collective bargaining starts, not wait for 2024. Where the money, whether it's ESSER or not, we'll know in June of 2023 whether this new system is working, and we'll know how much it's saving. And I would also encourage the board members to pay attention. It's the health insurance fund is in our monthly financial statements. This last month it was page 13, but it's internal service funds health, and you'll be able to see that. And then also when the Aon reports come and the minutes, I would encourage all of us to read them and just pay attention, because we got in trouble before back in 2010, well, when we went broke, that one, where we weren't able to fund our health insurance and the workman's comp, and we did have troubles back then. So I don't want to see us get into that position. So, okay.
So just to close, if I could, I know we're way over time.
Okay.
My slide keeps
No, not
disappearing, but
everything's
it's
in.
back on here now, so let me just talk about it here before it goes away. So we talked about cost savings. Yep, specialty drugs is gonna be the big one right now. It implements in January, pumping up for the COVID expense. That comes out of the ESSER funds, and that's just for COVID expense. So we're really just covering real COVID expenses there, not plan expenses. So that's why that's important. So why is this important? So 10,000-foot view, Pasco County School Board implemented this a few years ago. A few of us went up to visit and saw it. They have multiple sites. Their employees utilize it. This is a great location for us. You're looking right now on the screen of the Wakeland Support Center. This is the wing that's out there kind of behind it. The parking lot will be right here in front of the wing when we're done with it, with all our renovations. MCR is paying for the inside renovations. We're pushing in money as well to do the facilities part of it. So this is important because this will give us site for our employees to go to. We haven't worked out all the details, and that's something we will work out with the committees. But just using the Pasco model as an example, they don't pay a copay. They get their drugs dispensed right on site. No copay for drugs, no copay to see a doc. You can always get in, you make an appointment, you get in, you see a doctor, it's readily accessible. This is a good model because what happens is you may have employees, and we all could be guilty of that too, who don't go to the doctor as they should for their annual checkups or do their blood work or do anything, everything we're all supposed to be doing. And so when they have serious health concerns, they're in the emergency room. And those costs are astronomical. So why not catch them before? Why not catch health concerns before people end up in the emergency room? So by giving employees accessibility immediately right on site, no copays, we think it's going to really help our health of our employees in our school system. So this is very exciting. I mean, because we've seen it in Pasco and it's working up there. And other districts are taking notice as well. So it's a best practice that we're bringing here. We're going to push it out here. We have the space, we have the facility, we have the partnerships, we have things in place, and this is another idea for cost savings and providing high health care services to our employees. It's a benefit. I mean, we all have good health insurance, so that's why this is important. We have competitions. It just was paid out, and you get the emails too. If you go get 200 points, you see a doctor, you get your physical, it's 100 points. You get your eyes checked, you get your blood pressure, you get your blood work done. All those come in, and you get an incentive of $200 to do that. That was good. There are a lot of people who went to the doctor for the first time, maybe in a long time, maybe the first time with blood work in a long time, and maybe there were some things caught that we can work on right now before it gets to be a big health concern. So we're doing that, we're doing this, we're doing specialty drugs, we're monitoring every month, we change the providers, we're doing different rebates on the drug companies. So there's a lot of things going on in our system.
I know some of you like quantification. Pasco saved $15 million their first year they opened their clinic. So if we can help our employees utilize our clinic in the same ways that Pasco encouraged their employees to, it has the potential, not just for the health of our employees, but the health of our insurance fund, and also time off the job, because our employees can leave work go to the clinic and return to work if they're not too sick. So, you know, it's a win-win-win if we can get it up and running.
Have we, and I'm sure this is a yes, have we studied how, when Pasco implemented, how did they get it out to their employees, the communication, the incentives thing? I'm assuming we've looked at that and
Yeah,
we're follow
we're
suit.
using Pasco's
Best
model,
practice.
but there's many districts that have implemented their own
Okay.
clinics. And we've been studying them for a pretty long time, but have not really been able to pull it together until, honestly, Ms. Saunders was able to partner with MCR. And this is another MCR partnership.
And there's no cost at all for us to run this clinic. There are no
Right.
expenses whatsoever for
So
us.
it's
Okay.
really an awesome opportunity for us for everybody to win. So
Ms. Spray had a
I
question.
wanted to give you a little bit of cost savings figures because I know that's important.
Yeah, one of the questions was, how much is our cost for this clinic? Because to me.
Zero.
Okay, and how many, I guess, employees would you anticipate? Can you give me an estimate of how many employees would actually use this clinic versus going to their own?
I can get back to you with that because I can get the information from Pasco in their first year, but I don't know that. I would
Because that's a
hesitate-
road trip that I might want to take.
I would
to
hesitate
see that,
to
you know.
try to give you that number because they have 2 MCR clinics and 3 others.
I think it's more like 5.
Yeah, they've
5,
expanded.
they've
Expanded
Yeah, they
theirs.
have like
But
5.
it's not only our employees, it's our employees' dependents that are
Right.
also on the insurance plan.
So they have quite they have maybe 7 clinics now. A combination of MCR and private run clinics.
It's been so popular that the sheriff's department in Pasco County has joined in and they utilize the clinics as well.
Do they
It's been-
pay a fee to use that clinic?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Okay, okay.
But it's a multi-agency collaboration with
Right.
the sheriff's department paying a fee, but it does have the potential for big savings for our plan.
Okay, you said that Pasco, the first year, they saved $15 million? Okay. I guess my thing would be, okay, if we're saving $15 million in our medical and benefits package, are we diverting that back into actual educating?
No, it has to stay in our health insurance fund.
Okay,
Because these are premiums that are dedicated to health insurance that were negotiated for health insurance.
That's why back in the day, the fund balance went so high because the money was going in, we weren't using as much, and that's why it
So we
Grew.
continue to keep our health insurance fund healthy
right.
by saving money instead of spending more than we're bringing in.
okay, so the savings has to stay within the healthcare
It does.
platform or bucket, you might say.
It's negotiated money for health insurance.
Okay, which could in turn add an additional benefit or increase coverage over something? And
Or
Are-
it could just make the fund solvent. I mean, we're looking at how do we keep the fund solvent right now? That's our goal with these cost savings currently.
right, and this
Our
is,
joint goal.
When the ESSER goes, we're hoping these changes will take the place of those non-reoccurring funds. That's
to absorb
the
that,
goal, that's the
what you're saying, to absorb that, okay. Okay, 'cause
And have a healthier workforce too.
right, I get
We want
that.
less claims. We want less claims coming into our fund. We want our employees to be healthier and hopefully they'll go to the doctors more or start going to the doctors.
Or go there instead of an emergency
You know, we're
room.
trying to encourage our employees to do all
Right.
their preventative stuff. Because then we don't have these big bills at the other end.
At the ER.
Okay, but that's all I had.
Okay. That's all y'all have?
That's it. We
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
the time today. We'll make sure you
Appreciate
get those reports every month. and
Absolutely. Thank you.
good Suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're taking a 5-minute recess real quick. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner.
back open from recess. Next item on our agenda is a review and board discussion of the proposed bylaw and amendments. And Mr. Chapman, it is your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Board.
Morning.
Mr. Chair, I thought maybe I spend a minute or two just kind of describing the process
Agreed.
for the new board
Absolutely, yeah.
members.
Yeah, explain what these are. Obviously, we have seen these before.
Sure.
It's been a month.
Yeah.
These will go into effect, obviously, for the board meeting for December. But yeah, absolutely, please.
Okay. So Kevin Chapman, and this is something that every school district is involved with, is updating their board policies, is what they're called. And they're on our website in a system called Board Docs, and it's very searchable. And what the process is so when there's changes to the laws or to either on the state level or the federal level, through statute, through rulemaking, those are then sent out by DOE or by the state or by U.S. Department of Education or all kinds of different agencies. And many years ago, school districts would have to find all of those and find ways to then update their policies. And it was a brilliant idea by a superintendent in Ohio who said, I'm tired of doing this. I'm going to create my own company that takes all of these changes in the law that's constantly happening and essentially just kind of reproduce policies for school districts in a formatable way that makes it an easy way to change policies. And so he created many years ago a company called Neola, stands for the Northeastern Ohio Legal Association. It's kind of a random name, but a majority of school districts in the country contract with Neola that provides this service. So what happens is Neola every month pushes out updates to board policies, for school board policies. I then take them and work with our legal counsel to essentially edit and make sure that our board policies are up to date to current law. And for the most part, 99% of the time, there's really no changes to be made by the school district. It's essentially taking the change that Neola is giving us, which is essentially word by word what's in the statute, and editing our own policies. So there's really, I'm a facilitator in that process. And what we've done recently under Mrs. Foreman's great idea was to kind of color code that if there is a change that the district has to make, meaning sometimes in the law, in the new legislation, new statutes, the district can make a decision on, let's say, is it the superintendent's decision to implement this, or is it the board attorney or the legal counsel? And those decisions, which rarely happen, we color code in purple. So instead of, you'll see the red and green line edits in these board policies, there's actually no purple in these. But whenever you'll see a purple color, and I'll make sure when I go through the process, I'll highlight those. Those are decisions that we make as a school district. You all decide on as a school board. But again, 99% of the time, essentially just taking what happens in the legislature or in court or in a federal or state department, and then putting them and making sure those edits are then made in our policies. So what you have in front of you is part of that process. So these are actually over this past several months. What we do is I'll come to the board and make sure it's on board work that there's been some changes in law. We need to update our policies. I'll produce a document like this, which kind of gives you a summary of those changes, making sure that you know that it was, whether it's a statute or a change in the legislature or a rulemaking process. You'll see those changes in green and red, again, sometimes in purple. Bring them to the board. You all are essentially, the first step is to approve the advertising of those policies. So you're not approving those policies, but you're approving the act of the board administrator publishing that we are making changes to our policies. We post those on the website for 30 days of public comment, so that way the public can weigh in on those changes, even though, again, 99% of the time, those are all changes by law. We have to make these changes. And then in that 30-day period, we make sure that we do something like this, a board workshop, so I can come up here, present these policies to you. You all can weigh in, ask questions. Obviously, the public can be here to make comments on them. Then we, again, if there's edits to be made, then they're brought back to the board, which the chair just was just talking about. Both these sets will be in next week's December 13th board meeting for final approval. Then once they're approved by you all at that meeting, I notify Neola and say they've been approved. They then make sure that those changes are then made in our policies. Once they're made in our policies, and if minor edits are made, that's fine. Neola then backs our policies by their own legal counsel. So if they're ever challenged, Neola who backs them in court, which again rarely happens because most, again, 99% of these are rulemakings, statutes, and legislation. So as you can imagine, in the last 2 years, there's been a lot of legislation coming out of Florida. And so it's just kind of, constantly coming before you. Almost every board meeting, there's probably going to be policies for you all to either approve or advertise. Then, of course, we have public hearings, just like we would on any piece of board changes or policy changes. So, again, all these policies have these two sets in front of you. Have been actually more than 30 days at this point, been out for public comment. We've received no public comments on them. And then once they're approved, they'll be on our website. And if you go to the district tab on our website, district website, you'll see right there policies. You click on that, it goes right to our board docs section, and it's pretty easy to search through our policies. They're kind of broken out in instructional staff, non-instructional staff, operations, security. So there's pretty easy way to search through our policies, and really these are the policies that run and operate our school district. There's also a set of bylaws, which is how the school board operates, and sometimes those get sometimes you all may want to change those. Sometimes in this case, if we go through this set, Mr. Chair, if that's,
Before you
go
get
ahead.
started, we do have a
Yeah,
question, Mr.
Good.
I was just curious, I think it's a good idea to have Neola. I'm just curious how much the contract is.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know. It is fairly nominal, but I'll get back to you on that.
Thank
And it's the I'll provide you that the service they provide is something it would take
Exactly.
probably a full-time person to do it with probably a legal background to do it. So
Great. Okay, thank you.
so the two sets. So if we start, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I just wanted
Oh,
to
yes.
add to that.
Spray?
I think that, to your question, do you know what we pay that Neola contract for? Because I know it came up at one time
Amanda can
in a
pull it up.
prior board.
I will tell you, I'll tell you the background with Neola while she's searching for that right now. In 2013, when I was hired, one of the findings the state had identified with the district is the board policies had been outdated for a handful of years.
Right.
No one had kept up with them. So it was such a huge task. We hired a firm to help us get them current. Getting them current is one thing, but because laws are passed every year, you've got to have someone ensuring that they stay current. And that when different policies and laws have been changed, that's communicated to staff so that you're following the new policy and law. So it's been a pretty seamless situation since we've used, and they're in predominantly most of the districts in the state of Florida. At your FSBA conference
Right.
last week, they're one of the sponsors because they are a legal firm. They take the statutes coming and then they write policies and stand by them. If we were to be sued or anything was brought up based on a ruling that the board held based on the policy, they stand by and represent and would be in court to support those decisions based on their policy. So that's the other thing. It gives you an insurance policy instead of our staff or a legal person trying to interpret. They have a whole firm, a team, and then it's vetted by other lawyers to say, yes, that's what the law said. your policy matches the intent of the law, and so that's why we use them. So it's easier to chunk it, so we do a few each time. Ms. Foreman had suggested, and it's a great suggestion, because doing this process in a board meeting can sometimes be very lengthy, and we have. It's better to workshop any before it comes before the vote, just so that everybody fully understands what the policy says, feels comfortable before you're voting on it. That, especially because we're dealing with legalities, is just a pretty brutal process in a board meeting. It can be very lengthy, so it's better to workshop it and so forth.
So Neola actually updates the board doc that
Yes.
we look at.
Yes,
Okay, and that board docs are shared in the same board doc. I know it applies to us, but you said it's in multiple counties, so
oh
they're
yeah, it's all over this,
managing,
yeah.
they're managing all of those other counties. Do they manage other states, I'm guessing, as well?
I'm sure they do, but I know they're represented predominantly in the majority of the state of Florida. So they send the document, the language, everything, and then the board decides to support what they wrote based on the law.
Okay,
Or the board can say, no, I don't agree with that. I'm not going to put that in policy. And you have the authority to do so. But then you represent the decisions that
Right.
are made, and they don't.
Right.
They stand by their policy. But I'm not saying you should just automatically stamp it.
Right.
It is coming with a lot of legal vetting and so forth. So you need to agree with what it's saying based on the law and the legislative changes. But whether sometimes we have policies, sometimes we don't always agree with the laws written, but we gotta have a policy that supports the legislation regardless. So we can't change that part. If you don't like how they worded the policy, you can make small edits and they won't support it. I know Ms. Messenger's saying, we've gone down that rabbit hole before, and we have, because when you change it, they no longer support or stand by it because
That
it's not theirs.
particular policy.
Right, because it's not theirs. So Ms. Means, were you able to pull the contract?
I need more time.
Oh, okay.
that's all right.
So, but she'll get that to you. She'll send it to each of you. But we've contracted with them for a number of years now, and that's the history of how they came into Manatee County.
Okay.
All right. Back to you.
So if we start with, I have on the screen here, this is from October, when these were advertised, and I can just go through each one and then just chime in if you have a question or edit to it. This is the one that starts with bylaw 0144. This is, if you're familiar with HB 1467, changing the your term of office can only be 12 years. So we're just updating that bylaw. The next set of bylaws is just combining these two. We had, you'll see both of these, and it's actually what the superintendent was talking. See how it says Manatee, copyright Manatee 2016 and Manatee 2021. That means those are our bylaws. And so we're just combining those two, and so that the numbers were screwed up. So it's 0175 and now 0175.1. So it's just a correction. 0172 is just updating from legislation in 9150 that just who can come visit schools. You all can have access to schools. Legislatures can too. It's that was just recently passed. 1120, 3120, and 4120. This is, again, a change in, just an addition to the statute, essentially meaning that a sexual offender can't be, is ineligible for an education certificate, kind of obvious stuff, but that's what those are being added to. 2416, again, recent legislation 1557, making sure that we add that to our policy concerning questionnaires. If you're familiar with that recent legislation, just adding that to our policy. 2460, again, spells it out there from HB 255. Just again, an update to our staff listing. 2623, student assessment is just from recent legislation, clarifying when the parents have a right to learn about the assessments that we do for our students. 3129 and 3129.01, again from recent legislation 2524. This is concerning the New World Reading Scholarship account. Just updating that language, make sure it's consistent with that recent legislation. 3410, again, is based on that same piece of legislation, 2524. Policy 5111.01 is our homeless students policy. I worked with our, oh, there's a question.
Before you go on, I don't want you to pass it.
Yeah.
And there be a question on one of the policies. Mr. Chatham had a question.
Yep, Mr. Cheatham?
Yeah, this is from Ms. Saunders, the New World Reading Scholarship. I'd
Yes.
like to know what that is, please.
Yes, that is really a nonprofit ran from an organization partnered with the University of Florida, and it provides literacy books to all students. So it's not just based on remedial or just a certain segment, but all students will apply. So we partake in that, and students are able to get books for their own home use and so forth. So yes, we're, I believe all districts in the state of Florida are participating with that as well.
Do we give them the books, or is it like on loan, and when they leave the school, they have to give them back, or is it?
No. They're given the books if they choose.
Right, and this is, you said it's a private, non-profit?
Yeah, it's a nonprofit, but it's under the umbrella of University of Florida as well. So,
Thank you.
The homeless students.
Hold on,
Oh.
Ms. Messenger.
Oh,
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Policy 3410 speaks specifically to longevity. And I guess my question is, in regards to what we're going through,
we will have, this will be part of our shade
okay,
meeting
okay,
with Miss Jackson
okay,
on this particular topic.
okay.
Yes, she will be representing
Okay.
the district in the.
Do you want to just explain real quick what the
Sure.
longevity issue and why we're doing the shade?
Sure. In the past, and it's been, again, one of these practices that are in most union bargaining, that teachers that meet certain milestones in their career during compensation of bargaining, they're given an extra supplement due to the fact that they've been here 25 years, 16 years, certain milestones. It varies by district, but it's a compensation agreement with the union and the board. Legislation just passed this past year that says you can't do that unless if they're on a grandfathered scale. If you're on performance, different story. Performance means that you're on an annual contract and your compensation has to exceed that of grandfathered employees. So we can no longer just give that longevity supplement as we have done in the past per legislation. Well, because it's a supplement, some legal counsel and the unions doesn't feel that that applies. We've had other legal counsel say, compensation is compensation. You can call it a bonus, you can call it a supplement. You have to follow the new rules on using the governor's money. Remember, they infiltrated a lot of money for beginning teacher, and they put a lot of language and rules on how you had to divvy up that money. So we're going to go to arbitration over this topic, just so that we can get some legal ruling, so we can make heads or tails on what that means. So we'll go into
I don't want to get too into the weeds on that because we're going to cover it Tuesday.
right, but that's
Did you have
what
something else?
this is about.
I just wanted to make sure I understand that what is being put before us is Neola's legal interpretation of that new law.
That is correct. But that has no bearing. I mean, that's what that is. We are going, because that's already what we've been advised legally as well on that. So, but yes, it'll be discussed in greater detail next week.
We're good.
A good question. Now, Ms. Messenger, if you don't feel comfortable yet with this, we can pull this until we have a conversation. You know, they give us batches of laws and summaries so that we're staying on top of everything. We can move it to another month if the board feels that you would like further discussion on this before we.
Well, my only thought on that is that the arbitration will be binding, so our policy could become either the rule or it could be totally useless. So that's my only, we don't know yet. So that's something we can discuss later. Or if the board feels strongly to hold back, then you can have that conversation with the superintendent. But I just, if now we know where we're going, I just wonder, like, I don't want to have to come back and go, whoops, let's just change that thing again, because we don't know. I think we know. We know, but
what we're advised. But if the board, even if you wanted to wait till we had the shade meeting so that you get more information, we can pull it, bring it back in January even. I think that's a very valid point. So maybe before you're putting a policy in there, if you're getting further legal advice about it and a process is in play, you could pull it and do it at a later date.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I understood that is Neola's legal definition, because I think we've heard so many different ones.
We
So
have.
and also I had no idea that Neola stood for what you said, so.
I'll say, let's leave it at this. Have you done all your board briefings yet with everyone for the 13th? If during your board briefings, if you feel like that should be pulled, and let's wait to see what the arbitration
Tomorrow, so.
does, we can
We can,
do that in that meeting.
okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Ms. Chapman. I'm sorry. Ms. Chatham just clicked in. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think I put my hand up accidentally.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, take it away. 'Cause
All right.
you have to take it away, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't have access to cancel you out.
I'm good, thank you.
The next policy, homeless students, that was in working with our Project Heart office that handles homeless students. DOE just wanted some of that language to be updated in our policy to be consistent with what they have in their homeless student guidelines. 5335, again, just updating some simple updates here from HB 173. And then in 6320, our purchasing policy, updating from 7049. Again, a minor change to that. So that's that grouping.
I do have a question.
I have a question. I don't think I've read it in there, but maybe it is, and maybe the legislature in the statute it's there, but I didn't see it. When we allow, of course, legislators and stuff should be able to go in the classroom. I mean, are they going to have to go through? I'm assuming they've already been through. Not Vulture, but Raptor. I knew it was some kind of.
JLA and all the.
They've already done through that, so it's like us when we walk into a classroom or walk into the front office.
if.
Or they're gonna have
they
to show license and do all that kind of crazy.
They have to provide evidence that they have, or they can't go. The same laws apply to anyone walking.
Gotcha. So they're gonna have to show, I'm a state senator, state
Right.
representative.
And
cetera.
verification that they've done.
Okay, that's
Jessica
good.
Lunsford and all those things.
Okay, okay. That's good. And they know,
And
I
they
mean,
get raptured
was that
too.
in, and that was in the statute, and they know that?
They know that whether they know
Sure.
that when they come to the school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because that other is a law, so that
Because anybody could show a fake badge and say, hey, I'm Will Robinson, and then,
Right.
you know,
Their ID
and
will
if
be-
somebody doesn't even know who he is, they just let him right in.
Yeah, every single
But even if,
driver's
Okay.
license.
yeah,
Okay.
even if they did that, the schools have to see evidence that they've had Jessica Lunsford, even if they say, I'm a state senator, because that other law
I'd put
is
that
still in place.
That'd be part of their training to get, when they get elected,
Right.
me personally. That way it's done, it's over with, and they can do whatever they want at that point. Okay, that's all I had. Let's see if we got anybody else.
Just me.
Oh, yes, we
I
did.
just, the policy on the homeless student revised, I didn't get a chance to look that up. What actually is there something in that statute about a foster child that might become homeless after they've aged out at all, or do you know?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I know we work very closely with the foster system, and there are different definitions of a homeless, certified homeless youth under state law, and I don't know if that is a foster a child. There is a definition there on the second paragraph of what constitutes a certified homeless youth. And I don't think a foster child is part of that definition.
Let me expand on why I'm asking. I'm also involved in the foster care network here. And it was brought to our attention that a child aged out of the foster system and chose to go out on their own, yet they were still a senior in school. So they were going to school and didn't have a place to live and was sleeping on park benches. I don't know if you're aware of all of that, but it did happen. So that's the reason I'm bringing this up is, is there anything in there for a situation like that at all? So,
And Ms. Bray, I am familiar with that. Being a high school principal, you're exactly right. When they're 18 years old, technically, if you're in foster care, you're no longer under that umbrella, so they're not getting monetary compensation. So the foster care family can choose to say you're no longer under this umbrella, I have had students fit that. What this says is if a student becomes homeless, and that one would possibly become homeless, they're entitled to continue going to school, their zone school, and you have to continue serving them academically, about no matter what their home situation is. The issue with that for an adult student, because technically if they're 18,
Right.
they're an adult student, is we tend to try to connect them to other agencies of support so that they are able to have shelter, so
Right,
that
and
they're
that's
able
what
to
I've been
go
working
to
on.
school.
Okay.
There's a big lag between, and many students turn 18 during their senior year.
right,
So if you're a foster student, there's a huge gap there of, yeah, you're 18, but you're still, we consider them children, right? They're
Right.
Still in school. So, but this really just talks about us serving them in the school setting, but that we have a whole division, Project Heart and our
Right,
homeless
right.
division that will try to reach out and give them help when we know of that.
Okay.
But it is a very difficult situation for those cases.
it was.
And they
It's
do
heartbreaking
exist.
to even hear
They do
about it.
exist.
Yeah, it was really heartbreaking to hear about that, We have a good foster care network here, and to know that a parent said, hey, or the student even, has the option.
They do. They-
So,
18 get, don't want to stay.
Been working real hard behind the scenes on trying to resolve that gap.
Right.
What you're talking about, so.
Yeah, I work closely with Kim Clutch, who runs that for the government here for Circuit 12,
Yeah.
and also Colleen, who works for the CPS. So we are in constant communication about those children who we are in the foster system in our school system, and those that run into our Circuit 12 agencies. So.
Right. Okay, that's all I had.
Mr. Tatum? Thank you.
Are we at the point yet to ask questions about the policies, or have you
Yeah.
kind of,
Oh, yeah.
you're done
Yeah.
with your summary, or
Right, there's a second set, but if you want to, but go ahead.
a second set of all the policies, or?
There's a second set of policies to
They're different. than the
go
first.
over.
So if you have a question on the first policy, I'd say yes, let's do that.
Sure, so on page 7 at the bottom, it says, I'll give you a second to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I would ask you to indulge.
Big number 7?
Yeah, the big number 7.
Yeah, okay.
And thank you for your patience. I mean, those of us who are new have to get smart on this stuff, so.
Yeah, no, this is.
So it says pursuant to bylaw 0172, my first question is maybe to the council here, what is a bylaw? That's a legal term as opposed to a law. Pursuant to bylaw 0172, what does that mean, ma'am?
The school district has a set of bylaws that it operates under.
So is a bylaw a legal, like a legal law that's been passed by the state legislature, or does the word bylaw mean we decided amongst ourselves to make this something that we operate by?
It's your operating.
Okay.
Operating
So it's not a law,
procedure.
it's something
It's a
that,
way of work that you
Have agreed on.
identify based on the policy. So if the policy says this is how you're going to do the work to exit, and those are board bylaws.
okay, so it's a bylaw, I guess.
Yeah, it's
It's not a legal definition, it's a way of doing business.
a way of doing business.
So it says, during a visit to a school or program, a board member observes a situation or condition which causes concern. He should discuss the situation first with the superintendent or as soon as convenient or appropriate. So, I happen to go to a high school, and I'm walking around for some reason, and I see a leak in the, it looks like there's a water leak in the ceiling, and maybe no one's addressed it, or it actually just started last night because it rained, and do you want me to come and talk to you about that, or do you want me to talk to the
You could do a
superintendent?
number of things. You
Okay.
could send me an email, you could say something to the principal too if you chose.
That's what I'm getting
Absolutely.
at.
But that's just, I'm sure it was written because when a board member was on a visit at sometimes something happened and they're like, well, it's not my school, how do you want me to address this? So that's what it is, just giving guidance on how, but you can easily say something to the principal, you can tell me and we'll certainly
I read
follow
this.
up on it.
I read this too as, for me, since you brought it up, as like, if you're in a classroom and I don't know, Johnny's misbehaving, I don't think it's necessarily in our right to go over and discipline Johnny, right? You know what I mean? But I think some of that, but leaky roof, I'm probably gonna go right to the administration there to let someone know rather than going through. But I would assume that's probably why this stuff was written. But that's a great question.
I guess the reason I wanted to know about the word bylaw, is this a law that if I didn't come to you, someone could, call the county prosecutor and say, Mr. Tatum violated the law because he pointed out a roof leak? Okay, so it's a rule that we operate by, which requires judgment on our part, because I don't want, if I go to 52 schools over the next year and try and visit them all, I don't want to send you emails about water leaks and roofs. That seems unreasonable.
And
It's
I
not
think
showing
like
good
Mr.
judgment.
Choate says, depending on the situation,
That's right.
some could be addressed right there. But some you may think, yeah, maybe that's not the right person for me to talk to. That is what you would bring my way if you felt it rose to the level of me or someone needing to address it. It could also be something great. Hey, this great thing's going on. It's going over here. Should we put it at a different school? So it's kind of that level of work.
It's a judgment call, and
It's a judgment
Okay, I understand.
yes.
Getting at things that you should be made aware of. You should
Right.
be made aware of,
Sure.
whether it's good or bad.
Sure.
It says, okay, so now on page 8, this was fascinating reading, by the way, just so you know. I actually read through it. because I guess these are the rules we live by. We should know them. It's kind of like when I was in the Air Force, you had this technical manual for a plane, right? And like it was just mind-numbingly boring, but you needed to know how the plane worked. So, you know. Anyway, the it says paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4 down. The superintendent shall recommend candidates for employment compensation and term of employment to the board. So last week at the FSBA, I seem to remember a discussion. That's where it was. We were talking about like you wanted to hire a new CFO or something. Here it says you recommend that to us, but my understanding was, I think I heard that unless there's a disqualifying reason, we have to accept your recommendations. So is that what, so do you recommend it to, who makes the hiring decision, I guess is what I'm asking. Do we make?
The board officiates the contracts. So the contracts are approved by the board, and so yes, it is a ministerial act, making a recommendation, but the board does have authority not to approve it, but there needs to be cause, really, for that.
Down to what level? Because I'm assuming.
All employment, all contracts come to the board.
So even like the assistant custodian at an elementary
Everybody.
school, we have to, it's part of that probably,
Yeah.
what do we call it?
Annual in many cases, and compensation. The board sets what the compensation for each individual employee classification, what their salaries are. So the board final approves that as well. We make recommendations, and then the board approves it or doesn't approve it.
So if Mr. Smith or Mrs. Jones becomes the assistant custodian at elementary school X, somehow that works it like onto the
Absolutely.
consent agenda or something?
That'll be on those HR packets that you get, and it is on consent. But yes, and you have access to read all of those. Who's being hired and in what position.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm just scrolling through some notes that I made here. Let's go to page 11, if we could, please. Top of the page, infield. To be considered infield, a primary instructor must meet one of the following qualifications. The teacher is assigned to a course covering subject matter for which the teacher holds a certificate, demonstrates sufficient subject matter expertise as determined by FACA 6A. That probably is a DOE rule or something like that. What does that, how do they demonstrate? They pass a test?
Yeah, all those are set by the Department of Education, and they classify what a person needs to be infield. In most cases, you have to have a certificate that matches that. Some can be on a temporary certificate. You just got out of college, you have a math degree. You're going to take a state test, license test, to be certified to teach mathematics. So they define what infield is, and so it's really set in stone by the Department of Education. Why it's important is there's a statute that says if you have people that are teaching out of field, we have to report that to the parents, and the board gets that information as well.
Okay, so can we have teachers that are apparently out of field, right?
You can, but the state defines how long and where you can have them out of field for as well. You could be you could have a biology degree, which means you're certified to teach biology. You have but I need you to teach chemistry. If you're not certified in chemistry, you have a science background, you're going to be out of field. But the teacher could choose to do that. The school may need it because I can't find a biology certified person today. And then that gives them time to be out of field to work on their certification. And the state gives you, it defines how you go through that process. But yes, the expectation is everybody's in field teaching what they're teaching. In reality, in today's world, not all teachers have a degree in their area of expertise. Some are coming in from job skill. You could be a business major, you have a lot of math background, but you're not certified by the state certification yet. So you're going to be out of field teaching math while you work on that certification.
Okay. I do have some more questions, but what I've just come to realize is that this would I have a lot of questions. It might be better for me to sit down with you or Mr. Chapman outside of a meeting to not take up time.
If you want, you can, in our briefing, we can go over, or we can set a meeting with Mr. Chapman as well. Either way you want to do it.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have then.
Thanks, Mr. Day.
Somebody else, you're good?
Yep. So the next packet is from November 8th. It's got that 1232, 3232, 4232, and 6480 as the first set of policies to.
Say that again a little bit faster.
I know, like a bingo hall. This is from, again, recent legislation 921, and it just spells into policy. You'll see in the red and the green, it kind of spells out a little bit more about really what a school district can spend its public funds on when it comes to political campaigns, which doesn't sound right to say, but that's why it's in policy. Essentially, what they're, to make sure that public funds aren't being used for to endorse a candidate or an issue. So it just spells that out some more there in those set of policies. In 6233, again, a minor change from 2524. And in 8405, this is.
We have a question.
Okay.
Yeah,
Before we go on,
More
go
minutes, yes.
beyond 6233,
All right.
that's the categoricals, and I understand that, but I just want to point out to other board members, 6233 also designates our reserve, and we have, state statute requires that our general fund have a reserve of 3%. Ours says, we want 5, and I have been advocating that we get it higher. I don't know that this is the right time to talk about it, but I just want you all to be aware of it, think about it, and maybe we can workshop it. But in the comparing to other districts, our 5%, and we had of the unassigned funds, total assigned and unassigned, we had 6.37% the year that I did this analysis, but other districts, like Sarasota had 16.53, Marion's got 13.46. And in talking with people at other districts, I think a lot of them are beefing up their reserves because of ESSER, because they too are encountering recurring expenses coming out of the ESSER funds. So I would dearly love to see us make a modification to take it from 5 to at least 7. But I don't know if there's any appetite to talk about that today or another time, or how you all want to proceed.
I would, go ahead.
I believe we're workshopping the budget first.
In January.
Yeah, one of our first workshops in January is the beginning.
Okay.
I would say,
Topic of the budget.
because that's the 5% change is our bylaw.
Right.
So my suggestion would be, let's do it with the budget, not with all these other policies that
That's
some are
fine.
not even ours.
Yeah.
But let's definitely put it on there.
Yeah, I just wanted to make everybody aware.
And then, yeah.
And so that they can read this policy, take a look at our financials, and then evaluate. And I have information I can provide from the Department of Education on other districts' reserve funds.
Was that it? Was that it?
Yeah, on that one.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then Ms.
Mine is on policy 3232,
Okay.
of course. This also says that instructional staff members may not expend public funds, but I understand they can't spend public funds, but some of them are using their voices in their classrooms on issues. And
And that violates policy as well.
that, right, and the reason I bring that up is because of the millage thing that was, what, last November? Yeah. When you have children and students coming in, making statements that my teacher said, that concerned me a lot. One child came in and said, we have to vote this because my mom will lose her job. So I think it's a little bit, that was a little muddy. And I think that that's something that we really need to enforce with our staff when issues like that come up, just in the future, that this policy is there. And it does not only apply to funding, but it also applies to conversations inside the classroom and/or any other environment of the district. Just wanted to make that point.
Duly noted.
I don't want to get into weeds with this, but coming from a American history teacher, I want to make sure that that the teachers understand that it's not that, and I hope this is what was meant by the statute. It's not that we can't talk things that are going to be passed or not passed, laws that are going to be passed, not passed by the legislature, whether it be state, local, commissioners, etc. Because, and maybe I was violating policy. Maybe I'm turning myself in. But with American history, one of my things always did was a current reading when we had to do those jump starts with reading and writing, and they had to have I'm kind of dating myself a little bit, but some of the best conversations we had in the classroom with kids that are 15, 16 that knew nothing was about policies that are happening and being passed, etc. So I don't want to eliminate that critical thinking part completely. I think what Ms. Spray is saying is I never voiced my personal opinion about this. This is what I think. This is what you should think, etc. So it's not about the talking of the policies and things like that. It's you as a teacher putting your viewpoint into them and saying you need to believe this or you need to do that.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure. And so that's my thing.
That's what I'm alluding to.
We have very strong policies to prevent that. Really, what's behind this change in law was very simple. It's to make sure school districts aren't using public funds to pass their millage, or to, like it says, expressly advocate the passage of the millage.
Right. Or go support a school board members running or a county commissioners running or something like
Exactly. So that's what is really this. This it's not because those policies are very clear. You cannot do what you just said you didn't do in a classroom.
that. Right.
The last time around, though, did we do that, though, with public funds? And I'm not asking it to be accusatory. It just seems to me, I remember, weren't there videos made? It went out, and I remember Miss Saunders went out on a road show and took a video and showed all the great things that are going on in the school. Would that be considered using public funds for promoting the millage, or?
It's expressly advocating the passage of the millage, which the school district never did.
Okay.
An outside committee that's not associated with the school district is able to do that, like in any campaign. But the school district never used public funds to expressly advocate the passage of the millage. But the school district can put out factual information about how the millage is being used in the school district.
Or good news stories about what's going on, stuff like that. Okay. I suppose
But
there's a
there
line
was
there.
an outside PAC that raised over $300,000 to help with that campaign. So you have to be very careful about what you can say in a classroom,
Yeah.
how you can communicate. You can certainly give information about what a millage is, what it does, what it's used for, what the district has done, but you cannot, with public dollars, advocate to pass it, tell someone to vote yes that way. Outside agency, private money, private firm, private whatever, can, but within the organization cannot. But obviously, because there have been so many initiatives all over the state, they've now clarified clean expectations in this rule, and that will apply to us in 2024.
I had one more comment that I'd like to make kind of publicly, and this is actually kind of maybe directed towards educators, is that if these kind of type of issues come up, I'm in agreement with Mr. Choate about, I think public policy issues should be able to be discussed in the classroom.
Sure.
And that even the consequences, what, if we pass it, what are the consequences, what are the negatives? If it doesn't pass, what are the?
Absolutely.
So that if it comes up, like a teacher is accused of, hey, you were advocating a law or a position or something, that we take a very liberal approach to that, in the sense of we're not going to tighten down the screws. Like, next time you talk about this, we suggest that you talk about it like this and make it a type of opportunity for how we could do this better, rather than to strictly try and apply these kind of rules and get teachers in trouble. Because I'm in agreement with him. I'm a proponent of free speech, and I would hate to
It's gotta be
see
information.
discussions.
It can't be advocacy, it's gotta be information only.
But it could be seen at, like, having been a teacher myself, I could see where you're,
Could be interpreted otherwise.
yeah, I was in Mr. Tatum's history class, and he was advocating for the passage. He wasn't advocating, he was telling us about the benefits of the millage, and how, if we pass it, this is what's gonna happen. And so it looked to me like he wanted the millage passed, when really, if you'd have taken the whole context of the class, these are the pros, these are the cons. Student goes home, parent gets upset, that we shouldn't have a knee-jerk reaction too quickly to condemn the teacher and say, that's what I'm talking to the teachers, that I want you to have free speech, and I want you to be able to talk about things, and then that we as a leadership and you as leadership not put the screws down and be liberal if these kind of things happen, and have an open mind about what really happened in the classroom. Is this free speech, or was this really someone? And it's kind of like the Supreme Court definition of pornography, I think it's hard to define, but we know it when we see it. I think we can know when a teacher was advocating to some degree and see that, rather than, hey, this was just a discussion, somebody interpreted it in some way. But let's be liberal as we apply these rules, so that we don't suppress free speech and discussion in classrooms about civic issues, which are important. And that's all I have to say about that. Okay, thanks.
Back to you.
I just want to expand on it too, is you said a PAC, was that a local PAC that did a lot of that?
Yes.
It was here locally, okay, and you said that public funds can't be used, however, we did use funds that was collected, I know, from,
Child care.
Yeah,
It wasn't taxpayer.
aftercare.
It was aftercare, yeah.
Aftercare.
It's funding our daycare, it wasn't tax dollars, yes.
Okay. Okay. That's all I had, thank you.
Okay. So the next policy was 8405. Some of these, in the 8s is all our security, emergency management policies. So all the next 3 are security related. 8405 is pretty extensive, but it pretty much is talking about several different areas. One is by July 1st of 2023, 80% of our school personnel need to be trained in mental health, youth awareness, so that's ongoing as we speak. It talks about a mental health coordinator in the district. That person's running that. Mary Beth Mason is doing that. And then just coordinating, making sure that our threat assessment teams at our schools are working with law enforcement, and that there's cross-pollination, cross-communication, and training on all the things that we do to keep our schools safe. And we usually, once in a while, have a security shade meeting where we talk about those things, where Paul D'Amico and his team come and talk about all those in the shade. So, but we like to say, the best security system in Florida, and we do. Our team does a great job, and every day in that work.
Go ahead, chair's going, but recognize Ms.
I just wanted a little more information on the mental health coordinator.
Sure.
Has this position been around for a while? Who does she report to? Does she have functions in addition to what's specified here?
Right, so this is somewhat new. This is part of the Parkland aftermath legislation. Mary Beth Mason used to be a principal for a long time here in the district. She's now assistant director of
She is.
ESE, and she's our mental health coordinator.
She's doing that now, but we do have a grant in that we wrote to address mental health and get additional funding. We do have a separate position that we will post. It will be grant funded to help Mary Beth take over some of those duties. We have a number of dollars that I spoke to Ms. Bray about too, from ESSER in finding so that we can put additional services in the school. But like anything, when it's funded under a grant, you really do need a person overseeing it very well and keeping up with all the requirements. But also when the grant expires, unless we're able to carve out revenue for that to be a regular general funded position, many of those grant funded positions will not be in place after 24. But right now, that one will be a separate line item that will be incorporated under the grant. And they report right now to to Dr. Thompson and that division and the ESE division and so forth.
Thank you.
And so 8407 is the guidelines to our safe schools officers, our SROs, and our guardians. And there's just additions to that, just kind of outlining just a little bit more to that for all those officers that are at our schools. 8420 is our emergency management. Again, spelling out just a little bit more. The main part here is Alyssa's alert, which we complied with. I think it was last year with our Centegix, our alert system. Sometimes when you're at, well, hopefully it never happens, but sometimes it happens when you're at schools or in meetings, you'll hear our cell phones go off, and that's the Centegix badge, which we all have. It's been activated, and essentially Calvary's on its way. So so that's just putting that in our policies there. And then the last is 8660, which just makes some minor changes to some of our bus operations here. Again, minor changes due to a change in the statute in that 2524 bill, which you've heard referenced many times. So that's the two packets that will be on Tuesday's board meeting for your approval. There'll be a public hearing before that as well. So we'll there still may be some public comments that could come at that public hearing, and so when that does happen and you all agree to maybe some of those edits, we just make those edits on the fly before you all approve those policies. So and then that's kind of your policy 101, I guess, of how it works. But
Mr. Chair, I had a question.
Yeah.
I think this is of interest to the general public as well as all of us, so I'll go ahead and ask it now. I did read that there was an extensive area in there about busing children homeless children that are in the district, but then they move out of the district. And I guess my question is how much of that's not the right word, I need to choose my word carefully. Is there a lot of that going on? Are there a lot of instances in this district where we're having to go like up into Pinellas County and transport children because they started the school year here and then they somehow end up there and then we have to go get them? Is that going on? Is that an extensive issue that is concerning to us, or is it really not something that we deal with a lot?
It's not beyond our borders for the most part. If they move out of town, you won't see them choosing to stay because of the distance. Mm-hmm. There are other rules with transportation that say they really don't want you on a bus more than an hour. So you've got these balancing rules that you're supposed to follow. But where we do have situations is you started at Southeast High School and became homeless, moved to Parish. But you don't want to be disruptive. You want to continue going where you've already been supported and established. that we do have some of those situations going on. And we do provide transportation, and it is a logistic operation to make that happen. But that would be more likely of scenarios than the other case out of county.
And there are a dozen students that this concerns, 100 students, 500 students. I'm just,
I don't know how many we have today. It's very fluid that need these services. I will tell you, especially when COVID hit and we had a lot of the aftermath of businesses closing and not operating and changes, there were more that were involved in this than we have today. But I can get you the number of how many homeless students are they transporting that meet the guidelines of this, so that you'll have a context of it.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
You just said that as we go through these policies during the board meeting, that if there's some changes, we could do that on the fly. However, earlier you said these are policies that Neola have sent to us, and if we don't
Fair point.
adhere to them,
Minor edits of
Okay.
words here or there. When I send it back to Neola after your approval with edits that we do make, they'll determine with their legal counsel whether there was so many edits that they can't back that legally, then it becomes our policy. It becomes a Manatee
Okay.
policy.
so we can make a change to the policy and then send that up to Neola and make sure that they're going to support that change, is what you're saying?
Supported with their legal counsel, and again, the changes we've, since I've been here, we've made, they've always backed those edits. You know, sometimes, you know, for example, Mrs. Foreman, you know, wanted to make an edit to our reserve number. You know, if we made that edit, that has nothing to do with Neola, so they
Right.
would obviously approve that. Or if we wanted to add, you know, add some more to a policy, say that we want 100% of our staff trained in mental, you know, youth awareness. You know, that obviously again would be something that they would support as well. It's when you're changing, what you mostly see in green is actually word for word, for the most part, from the actual statute or from the legislation. So when we start playing around with that, that's when we, you know, get ourselves out of that legal, you know, construct that we have with Neola.
Okay, because like you said, this is gonna be public commented, could be.
Yeah,
You know,
sometimes.
and there could be something
Yeah.
brought to our attention that, oh, yeah, that might be a good change that we need to make.
Sometimes that happens, and then
Right.
legal counsel will help us with that as well, to say,
Okay.
you know, that's, you know, that's an okay change, and, you know, so on and so forth.
And that would be something that we could check to with this side of the legal, to see if we can do that as well. Okay, that was my questions, thank you.
One point, and this is, of course, the nitpicky legal point, on
Yes.
page 17 of the first batch of documents,
Yes?
the copyright wasn't changed from Neola 2010 to 2022. Page 17.
Oh, very good. Yep, yeah, I got you.
Good catch.
And Neola probably would have caught that too, so even though it's their
Doesn't make
their
us
mistake,
proud,
but-
but we're going to catch it for you.
Yeah,
You earned your money today, so.
yeah,
there you go.
yeah. It was,
Yeah, you did. Thanks.
it was probably a legal aid who missed that. So.
Any other questions? I don't think we have anything else. No one else is lit up to speak, so
Nope.
thank you very much, Mr. Chapman. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chapman.
Thank you.
Do we need another quick recess? You guys okay? Ready to go? Let's finish this up. Perfect.
All good.
So last one is discussion of board procedures and workflow, obviously moving forward. So here are some things that, when talking with Ms. Means and also with Superintendent Saunders, here's some things that I'd like to change and do some different stuff moving forward. Since we're in a workshop, let's start with workshops. I'm going to move the public comment in the workshops to the beginning. I'd like to hear what the public has to say about the items on the agenda before we start discussing it. I think that would help us if there are something like we just talked about, tweaking certain things like that. Obviously, we didn't do it now. These are changes to the next time.
Right.
I do want to see from two things that I need you all to we can kind of decide here. First one is the day that we're holding workshops. Right now, we've been doing on Thursdays. We did it on Fridays when I first started. I particularly would like to go back to Friday mornings of the week of the meetings. So, we have a meeting on Tuesday, and then that Friday morning is the workshop like it was before. Thursdays, to me, are just more busy than that Friday morning. And then, or the other idea that I had is to do them on the alternating Wednesday. So the first week of the month on a Wednesday morning, and the third week. So not on the same week as our meetings. So we wouldn't go Tuesday meetings and a Wednesday workshop. They'd be staggered. So you'd have a workshop on a Wednesday. Next week you have a Tuesday meeting, workshop on a Wednesday. Granted if we needed them. So those are my two ideas and thoughts. So I'd like to hear about what you guys think about that with workshops. I know you had your hand up.
Okay, I did. And I don't care whether it's Friday or Wednesday. I think I would like the input of staff who has to work these meetings because they may want a 3-day weekend every now and then.
That's my point.
So I think that's important. What my concern on workshops, I had two things written down. One is I want them on the schedule, whether we know we're going to have a workshop or not. Let's have it on the calendar so that we can plan. Because
And if we remove it, we remove it.
this last year we were getting workshop notices, a week and a half before, and it just messes up planning, for all of us. So I would, whatever we decide, I would like to see it on the calendar.
Agreed.
Period. Okay. And then the other is I don't want to see workshop discussions cut short. And I think you had that same concern last year that
Like when
that we had too much
we
stuff
gotta
on
stop,
there.
we gotta
and-
stop. Yeah.
Yeah,
agree.
I appreciate the way that you conducted today where everybody got a chance to get their questions answered, even if we went over on one topic.
I personally would rather see, and this is, I don't even think about that, but I personally would rather see us say, we need another workshop on another day to add an hour to something. Let's say we didn't get to something. I'd rather us say, hey, if we're going to have a hard stop at 12, that's fine, but I don't want to cut something short. I'd rather push that next thing back. And then we can sit as a board and say, what's the priority of that workshop? Next workshop is, bus transportation. Do we need to look at that more than we need to look at budget or whatever?
Right.
But I agree
Okay.
with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Should we have some type of time limit though? And like, let's say a workshop starts at 9 o'clock and I have a 3 o'clock meeting in the afternoon and
No, typically
we go
they've been
6 hours. I'm
typically
like,
9 to 12.
okay.
Yeah, typically, and I would like to definitely keep that. So we know 9 to 12, we're out of here at 12.
Okay.
So yes, so that you can then have scheduled the rest of your day. Absolutely. It's just that in the past, we've had some times where we're in the middle of a discussion of an item and we had like 3 or 4 items. So we said 45 minutes apiece and we left that item to move to the next one. And that it wasn't resolved. It was kind of
Right.
in there. So I personally would rather, and then this would probably be something that I would say, what do you all want to do? Do you want to keep discussing this item and push back another one if we don't get to it? Rather than say, nope, we got to stop, move on to the next topic, and we haven't even finished topic. But 9 to 12, I agree with you there. I want to start and I want to end, and I like the 9 to 12. But I don't want to pigeonhole ourselves. We got to do something every 45 minutes. I agree with that. Thank you.
And I agree with that too. I like the discussion.
You have any comments about days?
Yes, I
Wednesday,
do.
Friday? Okay.
I'm more a Wednesday,
Okay.
because I agree with Ms. Foreman, staff could be doing a 3-day holiday. I could be doing a 3-day holiday.
Sure.
I deserve a 3-day holiday. I haven't had one yet since April. So,
Okay.
yeah,
And
I
wanna make sure
prefer
that
Wednesdays.
Everybody knows, hopefully I said this correctly. It's not a Wednesday after the meeting. I don't want to come. I
Oh,
don't wanna
no,
have a meeting
no.
at 5
The following
till
week.
9 and then come here at 9 a.m. and do another thing for 3 hours.
Like
that's
the
not fair to
following-
staff.
Yeah.
They got to work. They got to go and do their normal job. So
Right.
this would be staggered first week and third week. Or if it fell like a third and a fifth week, some days are different. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it would just be staggered Wednesdays instead of back to back. So
I-
was that all? Was that the only thing?
That was it,
Okay.
yeah, the Wednesday.
Messenger, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just taking notes. I was gonna hit them all at once. I don't have a preference on Wednesday or Fridays. I think there's a benefit to the Wednesday, if only for the fact that if you're preparing for the agenda all week for that Tuesday meeting, having to then also prepare for a workshop on Friday might be cumbersome, whereas Tuesday and then you have a whole nother week. But then also then you feel like you're always on the mouse wheel going, oh, Tuesday, oh, Wednesday, oh, Tuesday, oh, I don't know if there's a win there. And I don't have a preference either way.
I don't think I have a preference. Part of me says it's nice to get all the meetings done in one chunk in 1 week and then have the next week to go out and visit schools or focus on something else during that week.
I thought the same thing with
You know.
Fridays, but I do agree with having a Friday morning. I mean, I do agree with saying if you want to do a weekend. So let me do this. Let me I mean, everybody kind of feels like Wednesday is good. That staggering of the Wednesdays.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I will say that if you were to do Fridays, it doesn't mean that somebody couldn't have, that's only 1 week. So then it's like, that if you did Fridays, like if you find,
Still have 2
that's a
Fridays
really
of the
valid,
month.
because he's just making a really valid point there of
Yeah.
maybe we as board members and as staff might want that week in between to do something else. I think that's really valid. But if you were to do it on Fridays, it doesn't mean that staff or whomever can't the next Friday have a 3-day weekend, because it really is only every other Friday or even less than that, because we might find, I mean, I imagine in the beginning, we're gonna probably need quite a few workshops, but there'll be a point where we get to a point where we're like, okay, we can just do it once a month, or who knows? And then it's not every Friday, it's every other, and then,
Yeah.
I don't know, I could see
I
that
had
point.
the same thought.
That's really valid.
I had the same thought that you. I could think. I do like to have. This week you have meeting Tuesday morning and Friday morning, and then that next week there is nothing, so you can go visit schools. You can go
Yeah.
take a vacation if you want, etc. Rather than there's going to be something every week. And I think that's what Miss Means and I talked about is that now there's something every week. So now if someone want to take a whole week vacation, they're going to miss either a meeting or a workshop. So
Do we mind asking, I was gonna ask Ms. Saunders, what would the staff think?
On Thursday, I mean, we've talked about Tuesday, we've talked about Wednesday
didn't mean
and
to interrupt
Friday,
you,
but
Ms. Messenger.
here we are on Thursday.
Thursday.
Sorry.
So I would like them not to be on Thursday, 100%. To me, Thursday is just too busy for me. I would like them to be. Friday's good. Wednesday's fine. I don't take a whole lot of week vacations, but I'm not. I don't want to hinder anybody else.
Here's the day. You're never going to pick a day that 100% all the time
Right.
everybody loves. Remember, we're not having workshops every week.
Right.
So there's no problem with it remaining on a Friday, and they're in the morning, I do agree that we do have some Tuesday evening meetings. So staff, even though we're at work, we all would prefer not to be in a meeting that next morning. I make sure when I'm setting my calendar for district meetings, we don't have principal meetings that next morning because it just is kind of challenging. So that's the only thing I would say. And we only have one night meeting, a month.
A month.
So you can, based on the feedback, I think we can pull the calendar, we can
Yeah, we'll
plot
mark
the
it.
days and get it out. At least you could cover between now and June, so people know what it's looking like
Right.
between now and June. And you can get that back to everybody, before Christmas break.
That's fine. We'll do some more discussion. I would say my gut feeling right now is Friday mornings. Just after having it on the 1 week, and I just would hate to have every week something for staff or.
Right.
So my gut is Friday morning,
Yeah,
but
then the next week there's,
yeah.
I think there's.
Then the next week you're off. As far as staff is off, don't have to worry about meetings. The next thing for workshops that I'd like to get your thoughts on, and there's a little caveat to this because we're still dealing with some, and I hadn't heard anything back yet from you, but which is fine, no worries. I would like to see our workshops move away from the boardroom. And I think we've done this in the past before. So I want to get some of the opinions of ones who've done this before. And the reason why I want to move it away from the boardroom is I feel like this is such a formal place. You even said it today. It's like we're sitting and grilling you. I want workshops to be the quote unquote roll up our sleeves and get and work and do something and figure things out. You don't have to really roll up your sleeves if you don't want to. But my question is, I believe, Ms. Messenger, you've been here when this happened, and I don't know if Ms. Horgan, you were on too. Okay, good.
So I attended some of those.
So I want to get your feedback, and the reason the room when I would suggest is 203 upstairs. We do some of our bargaining, some of our shade stuff, some of our executive stuff up there. I know that there has been public go up there and during audit board meetings, audit committee meetings and things like that. Public goes up there and sits. So my concern with it is one, Ms. Means and I were talking about one, the capabilities of our TV, our electronics, all that kind of stuff. So that still has to be aired out a little bit. My second concern is, today we have no public comment, but there's going to be times where workshops, what do we do if there's 20 people? Does that room is that conducive for that? So then is there overflow? So then so now that's going to be few and far between, I truly believe, I hope. But my intention behind moving the workshops is strictly to have it be less formal of a place where we are having a conversation and it's not us sitting on top of and looking down on someone presenting. It's more of a conversation. It's more of a
Casual
so that's my thought. So I know you've been through this. I'd like to hear from the two that have been through this, have used that. What are your thoughts on that?
So just a couple things. I believe that room has been updated so that you could air meetings from there. I don't think that would be.
No, we have recording.
Audio.
I don't.
We have recording 100%.
I believe
I think
there's
there's a
robotic
video.
cameras in there as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I think
It may not be multiple camera shots, which whatever, that's not necessarily needed. But I agree with you. Yes, I think it is.
I think that part is doable. The issue that we had before, first of all, I agree with you. I actually like sitting up there better when we did workshops there. I think it's better because then I get to sit across the table from everybody rather than doing this and have a much more meaningful conversation. So I agree with you on that. The downside that we had, and it was, so we used to do our workshops before a board meeting. So when you would do that, staff would have to physically take everything from here, put it up there, and then run back down here and plug everything back in because we had a meeting half hour later. Terrible. So the biggest thing that I remember was the technology part of like, if we need our laptops, if then they have to go and they have to wire everything every time and carry the laptops up there and then undo those types of things. But since it's not such a time crunch, maybe that would be doable at this point. That I can't say.
That was one of my thoughts too. My thought was that we bring our own laptops. That it's not this laptop; it's the one we're issued, and
then staff wouldn't have to worry.
Staff doesn't have to worry about that part.
But then it would be on the board.
It's on the board member to bring.
Responsible and
You want to bring your iPad to be able to bring up the agenda? That's fine. You want to bring the district laptop? That's fine. But it'd be on us to bring that. You don't have to bring a laptop at all. If you want to print off everything, print off everything.
so that really wouldn't work because you want to use the system in here, which I also agree with you using the system. I think it's very useful. But then in a workshop, that
Correct.
may not be feasible if everyone doesn't bring their laptop and all the laptops don't have that iLegislate.
Right.
But that's another thing, you know what I mean? Like maybe during workshops, we throw something at you instead. I don't know, we could,
I get you. And that's something that we can. Yeah. Okay.
But that, to me, if I remember correctly, that was the biggest issue, was really and doing it so quickly because we had our meeting immediately afterwards, which we don't have anymore. We have separated that because it made way more sense to do it this way. So I don't know if that would really necessarily be an issue. I personally like it being up there if that's not too cumbersome for staff. I agree with you. I think it is more beneficial for us. And I think it's less, intimidating
my thought is.
because people will say, well, I stood there, but I'm like, no, there's not, like, we're just people. We're all just people. You know, there's no reason to feel anything other than that, you know, but it does feel like that. So I get that point. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, about public comment. Well, we have had, you were up there when we did like our master board up there.
Correct.
And we did have seats for public comment.
Correct.
There would be enough seats for at least 20 people, which now that you've moved public comment to the front, you might actually get that. And people come up and then walk back out. You could get that now. So you might get some of that, but I don't think I think that room would hold those seats.
I think so, yeah.
Unless
Because-
you had some crazy hot topic. I mean, there have been instances
Of course.
that we've
And I
lived
think that
through
if we
where
know-
you did.
I think if
but-
we know a topic that we know a workshop's coming up, we may have to adjust.
Yeah.
As long as we post that ahead of time saying this is no longer in 203, it's in the boardroom.
Yeah.
Because we feel like there's going to be an attendance, then we can do that. But I do think you could fit 20, 30 chairs.
I think you could. I think you could easily fit
Mr.
that
Choate,
much.
when you publish the agenda, you put the location.
Right.
Yeah.
We can certainly, knowing the topics, adjust the room accordingly. But there is room. There is no overflow, but there
Right.
is room there. And like when we saw what was on this one, this would have been very appropriate to have in that location. So I think you'll, be able to gauge based on, the items. And then we just post that. So you'll know the date. Does it matter to the board whether it's here or it's on the next floor? But when it's published, you'll know the location at that time. But at least you'll have the calendar date set of when the workshops are so that you can plan accordingly between now and, like I suggested, by June, have the rest of the.
Right. Was that it, Ms. Messenger?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Ray, you
I
got
just had a quick
Thoughts,
comment.
ideas?
Yeah,
thought outburst?
I've had several meetings up there with CFOC
Right.
on that committee. And there has been people that has come to the meeting to do public comment, and there's really no area for that. It's just stand up where you're sitting.
I think
So-
we would want to make.
Yeah, we would need to designate an
podium or
area,
something up there.
something, not really, something little,
Yeah.
not too big. But that, I think, would have to happen is, we would have to have a designated area for public comment.
Was that it?
Yes. Okay. I did attend meetings up there when the audit committee went up to give reports. We would go there, CFOC, when they go and give their report, So sometimes it was a little crowded in the public area, but that worked. And I would watch the meetings, and the interaction of the board, from old, from the videos. And actually, I suppose we could go back and take a look ourselves. I do think there was some conflict back then, a little bit. And I think that they felt freer to express that, whether that's a good thing or not, that's a different question. But,
Because it was more like an informal rather.
right, because you're sitting there, they had the tables in a square, and everybody's sitting there and looking across at each other. And, so that was my observation of it. The fact that we're intimidating here, maybe this room needs to become less intimidating even for the board meetings. Lower it, we're gonna be doing some renovation in here for HVAC, but I don't know, maybe we can do something about that, where we are less up here.
Yeah. And I think that the reason why I use intimidating is because if you're not used to like speaking in front of someone and when you come up to podium and you've got this thing circled around, where when you're in the 203, it's an open room, it's not.
This is a
like
formal setting.
Absolutely, and I want the workshops, or the decisions are made, in my personal opinion, during the workshops to then vote during the meeting. Most of the time, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but most of the time we're getting through the nitty gritty stuff during a workshop, and the board meeting is just the final check or no. So that's where it just seems more conducive of an actual workshop environment.
Whatever you want to do.
What do you think? Any thoughts?
I think the pros of being in a more informal setting outweigh the cons from what I've heard. This is not, to me, a workshop setting. This is, as Ms. Saunders said, it's very formal. That is intimidating. Whatever persona we project to the person there, we grill them. They stand in front. It's like I feel like I'm watching Law and Order, you know, and the lawyer comes up to the podium, and they're at the appeals court, you know, and the lawyer is giving his, and there's 5 appeal judges sitting up here, and however nice we are, it's just not a workshop setting that's conducive to good communication and working through issues. You know, raising your hand all the time and talking to I don't know. I agree with you. The pros probably outweigh the cons. Hopefully that will be true.
I agree with the workshop being up there, but I do still believe the board meeting should be in this setting.
Oh, no,
Always,
100%.
and-
Yeah, that's not
And
changing.
I don't know about renovating.
We're going to the roof.
And renovating and all of that, I don't know about that, but.
Get
you know.
outside, you know, get outside air. Okay, so that's workshop. So really nothing really huge. I mean, obviously changing the room and that sort of thing. And I will put something out for Friday. The other thing too, just since we're on workshops, I'll jump down. My goal for the meetings, and it was kind of, you can see it today, but I believe that our meetings, because we're talking about things, we're doing things, we need to be streamlined, need to be efficient, and so I'm going to make some changes to the meetings that I personally believe will make it more efficient, and make us move to get to business how we should. So the one thing that I'm going to ask that we do with workshop items. So typically at the end of our meetings, we have, you know, we go through superintendent comments, operation comments, then we do workshop items, request items. That can kind of open up Pandora's box. And all of a sudden we're talking about all these different types of things. And 20 minutes later, we haven't even added an item yet. We talked about it and that sort of thing. So I personally would like to, during your briefings, with the superintendent, you bring up workshop items request then, so that we have them and they're on the agenda. So if you say, hey, we need a workshop on the budget, looking at our bylaw, our policy of having the 5%, that is on the list when we see it, when the public sees it, board workshop request, that's on there. If there's nothing on there because that week we didn't add anything, we still have scheduled workshops, but I mean the new ones. So if it's a new item that you feel like you want workshop, I want you to be able to bring that. I want you to be able to tell you that to the superintendent, and then we'll put it on the agenda to then discuss. So then we have thoughts of, it's not just here's an idea that I think we may need a workshop, right? And again, that to me is hopefully the efficiency of moving that. So any workshop item request, bring that to the superintendent during the briefing, so then it can be put on the agenda. We can actually see it and talk about. So meetings, only real change to meetings. We're not going on the roof. I was kidding. It'll be obviously in here.
Parking lot.
But we all have to stand on our heads. No. So the first thing we talked about, the reading of and I like it. Instead of the mission, I like the vision, the district vision. It just reading both, the district vision just kind of hit me more than the mission. Like the vision is really good, and I want it to be read by a different board member every meeting. And so the meeting that you will read it is the meeting that you do. I'm going to bring this from what Reverend Golden did. When you bring someone for the invocation, that's the meeting that you're going to read the vision. So Miss Means will get that out there, the dates for you to choose. I will do next week. I have someone already ready for next week. But I would like for you as the board member, and I think, what was it last year? Maybe 2 meetings we had to choose each, 2 to 3 meetings. We had to find someone to do the invocation. It wasn't terrible. So I want you as the board member will introduce who you're the pastor, the priest, whoever it is. They'll do the invocation. And so, the same week you do the invocation, you have that person, you're going to be doing the district vision, reading it. And we'll get that, how we get that to you, the vision, so it's in front of you, so you don't have to memorize it. We'll figure that part
We
out.
need to memorize it, but my question is, could we be consistent on standing or not for the invocation?
Yes, I would like to stand.
I would too.
I would like to stand for the invocation, so absolutely, let's do that. And we'll make sure we announce that too. Yep. Second thing is, and you probably have seen the agenda's already been out, so it's already been put out. I want a 30-minute public comment, general public comment. We're going to move it up as far up as we possibly can. It'll be within the first probably 5 to 10 minutes of the meeting. It'll be right after our first recognition. If we have, I think next week we have principals and vice principals of the year, and then we will do a 30-minute public comment. If we don't need 30 minutes, that's fine. If it's only lasts for 2 people speaking 6 minutes, then we move on. But I like to be able to provide some public comment in the beginning for people who do have to leave and go somewhere and do something else, but they still want a chance to come up and voice their opinion to us.
I have a question there real quick. So what is our legal requirement for public comment? Do we, if 100 people sign up, do we have to allow each one of them their 3 minutes, or
We
what?
don't have to give any public comment if we don't want to.
Even at board meetings? We don't?
Yes, the only thing we have to do is any voting item if they want to speak on that item, and that'll be another potential place for here in a second. But if they want to speak on like item number 2 that we're going to vote on, yes, they have to speak.
Okay, so this is something, as I've watched the board meetings, there's public comment on anything general they want to talk about related to the school. I don't like the color of the building of elementary school. They can come up but we can limit that. We can say we're only going to take 30 minutes of this public comment. But if now we're voting on something, if 100 people want to come and talk about that item, we have to, and I say we have to. I mean they should be they have the opportunity to come redress their grievances. I'm just trying to understand how it works. So there's general public comment. Anything you want to talk about school related, and then there's specific to the item. General public comment, we can limit it. Specific to the item, anyone that wants to talk, they get to talk.
Yep.
And
But
as
you
long as
can
it takes.
limit the
Limit
number
time.
of minutes on
Yes.
Right.
the voting item, but the general public comment by law, you do not have to have. We elect to do that. Our board has said it will be 3 minutes, et cetera. But you could, if you had a lot of people, the chair could, and we discussed that, I believe it's in the bylaws that were changed. You could whittle down the length of time that you give them, but everyone has to be able to have a
And just
voice
to be
if you're
clear,
voting.
this is just the first 30 minutes. So we're going to have another section if there's 50 people in here and we can't fit all 50 general public comment that first 30. It's very similar to what the county commission does. You're just got to wait for the next section. So it's not like I'm limiting only 30 minutes, but I like to open up 30 minutes and then go from there.
Okay, I just have a comment on that. You're saying you're gonna allow 30 minutes.
Up to.
Up to 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting on any topic that they wish in general, but you also said, if they wanna make a comment about something that is on the agenda. So they don't have to wait till we get to that specific agenda item, that they could make the comment and then they could leave.
If they want, if they want to talk at general public comment, if they want to talk about a voting item that's happening at the end of the year, at the end of the meeting, absolutely, it's general.
Okay,
So they can talk about the color of the building, or they can talk about the budget item that we're about to pass. Absolutely. I mean, at
Okay.
the beginning, it's general public comment. So whatever they want to talk about. Yep. Then the other thing too, so, and this is about efficiency. This is about moving the meeting. I have found it very clunky at times when, let's say, we're looking at a new business item, and it's changing the bylaws, whatever, and we get a motion, we get a second, and then we start discussing it, and we accidentally go to the vote and don't even go to the public comment. Or we're in the middle of it, it's like, oh, stop, we got a public commenter, it's Mr., so-and-so. That to me is a disruption of, so before new business, we will have the public comment about those specific items before new business begins to even start. So we will have the public come up and say, if it's about, we're gonna paint Southeast blue, and they don't want Southeast blue, and we're voting on it that night, they are gonna have a chance to talk about that before the item comes up. And that, so that we know, okay, we know that Miss Smith came up and said that she doesn't like blue. Now, there's still gonna be another general public comment after at the end, but I want to, and this may change, we'll see how it works, nothing's gonna be perfect, but I feel like if we can get the public comment to know before we actually even get into a topic, is more beneficial for us rather than breaking things up, breaking conversations up to make sure we get public comment in or out. Thoughts?
Just some food for thought.
Yeah?
There have been times where a board member has requested something get put on the agenda that nobody else even wants to touch. I can give you a list.
Well, when you say the time, is it before the meeting? Like, at the
Yes,
meeting
it gets
starts?
put on the agenda
Okay.
as something that the rest of this board goes, mm-mm. But that board member has the right to put it on the agenda.
Okay.
It could rile up a whole lot of people. You could receive a whole lot of public comment for it never even to receive a second. The board has no desire to really take it up. The board has no desire to even have that discussion. But we're going to end up hearing 2 hours of public comment on something that we didn't even want to talk about. We weren't even going to second it because there might be one rogue board member that goes, I really want us to do X, Y, and Z. And you as the chairman go, okay, well, I mean, I don't know, you haven't really touched on how you feel about that. There have been chairs in the past that say, no, I'm not putting it on the agenda. And there's other chairs in the past that have said, if a board member requests it, it goes on the agenda. That's also your
Yeah, I haven't
purview.
did that yet.
You will, and that's your purview. And then then if you have it set up in this manner, we will be receiving copious amounts of public comment on something that perhaps the rest of this board has even no desire to take up. Because typically the way it's done is motion, second, and then it's an indication, hey, this board really actually wants to talk about it.
Sure.
Just some food for thought on that, because
That goes against.
there have been things that
I understand. I see what your point is. And yeah, I can see what you're talking about.
But I will
So I will say this, and I haven't gotten to it yet, but I would like to keep that if as a board member, if you would like an agenda item on the next board meeting, you've got until Friday at noon of that previous Friday. So if you wanted something to be added come this next meeting on Tuesday, it's got to be put in Friday by noon. That way the staff can upload it, can do everything they need to do for the agenda, so that the public has time to look at it and see what's going on with it as well. And then we as a board members have a chance to look at all the documents in the agenda packet. I don't want, and it is your prerogative, but I guess you can motion to add an item whenever you want. But I would like for it to be that we as a board have knowledge, we have everything, because I don't want to bring up, let's paint Southeast blue, and I don't know why I'm going Southeast blue today with all my examples, but whatever. Maybe because there's a ceremony tomorrow. But let's paint it blue, and we don't even have any background on what's the cost, do we want it blue, what do we, and so I do request that any new items be put on before noon, the Friday before a board meeting. So I know that was part of what you were saying.
Yeah, I was just saying, I agree with you that that can be clunky, but you as a chair can manage that without doing it in this manner, simply by doing a motion in a second, and you will have the list of public comment. You can say, Vice Chair Spray, I see that we have public comment, and let her run it, and then turn it back to you and go, Superintendent Saunders, do you have any comment? And then open it up to board. I mean, you can come up with a process that works for you that would allow it to not turn into what it could turn into should you have some rogue crazy thing that gets put on there, which can happen.
I got you.
Just something, just a thought.
Yeah.
Good governance says that we have our agenda published 7 days in advance. So if we start putting in things by noon on Friday, and it doesn't get published until Friday, it gets published like 5 o'clock Friday, and our meeting's on Tuesday, that gives the public little notice as well. I think in the past, we could put in a request for an item on the agenda, and you, the chair, and Ms. Saunders make a decision whether it goes on or not. And I happen to know, I've had a few shot down. But, and then the board member, if they're still insistent on it being on there, can do it at the meeting.
Yeah.
But I think that gives the public a better sense of what's gonna be on that agenda.
So, yes, so I guess I maybe didn't make that as clear as possible. I think, yes, you are correct. The best practice is during your briefing, say, here's a new item, a new business item I would like to be on the agenda. So that way, you're right, it is published 7 days. But if something were to happen on a Thursday that you feel like this is important for us to do, we may need to put this on the agenda item ASAP, that you could at least have an attempt to do that by that Friday at noon. And then we can discuss and say, do we really want that on there or not? Or that's not
I think it's.
But I
yeah,
do
your
agree, but I
deci-
do,
your
yeah,
decision.
I do agree with you that standard operating procedure, our SOP should be, you tell Superintendent Saunders during your briefing, new items and workshop items. So we're just adding the workshop. So I do agree. And I do like your thought, Ms. Messenger, and I would definitely take that into consideration.
I have a quick.
Yes, I'm sorry, and then go to you either, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Spray.
Oh, go ahead.
Procedurally, what you just said there, this is something I've had a question about. It seems like a lot of power for a chair to have, whether it's you or me or whoever, to just be, I am the final arbitrator of agenda items. I mean, you know, if I have an agenda item that I'd really like to get discussed and I just keep putting it in every week, and for whatever reason, it's not something you want to talk about, how do we get past that impasse?
You're bringing it up at the beginning of the meeting to add it in onto the agenda at the time.
And then we make a motion and then a
Yes,
second, if it's
absolutely
not
correct.
seconded, then
Yep.
it dies.
So if you bring up something to me and I've denied it, and then you finally say, listen, I want this discussed. We had this done a couple months ago or a month ago or so, I want to say. So you would bring it up to say, I would like to amend the agenda. And then you would then at that point need a second, and we'd vote on it to amend it and bring it up there. And then that way it bypasses the chair at that point.
What if it's something that's somewhat complicated? I suppose I could make it a motion to say, I'd like this to be put on a future agenda rather than today because it's too complicated. It requires, you can make a motion, how would you get it on a future agenda item? Because it's too big a deal to deal with.
You could do it exactly the way you described. So if you want a motion to paint all the high schools blue, that has a lot of moving parts to it, as Mr. Choate has kindly pointed out to us. And so you would say, I'd like to make a motion, I want to have an item put on a future agenda. I'd like to make a motion to have a discussion of painting every school in Manatee County blue.
Okay, you could even put a date with it, like on the meeting that is scheduled for the 14th.
The next meeting, right?
Or a next meeting, or
Yeah,
within
or whatever.
the next month or
And
something.
I would say a future agenda as soon as possible, and, you know, with the hopes that perhaps you've spoken to the superintendent who goes, you know, like, we got a lot of weighty stuff that's, you know, no offense, but possibly more important than painting all the schools blue in Manatee County. You know, the earliest agenda, because we've got some really full meetings, earliest agenda would be, you know, 6 weeks from now, you know, a month and a half or something. But that would be the way to do it. And because, again, in the interest of time and in the interest of everyone having at least some background idea, thought process about whatever your issue is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
Answer that? Okay.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of one of those balancing acts. You're saying, go to the superintendent with something that you want to add to the agenda by a certain time. However, something comes up, to Mr. Tatum's point, you want to talk about that, you want to amend that agenda right then and there. Because I had a discussion with Mr. Chapman about an item I'd like to put on the agenda, but I did not talk about it with Superintendent Saunders yesterday because I had already brought up the idea there. So how do you anticipate something like that? I mean, this is an item that's very important to me. Do I say, I want to add this to the agenda
I
now?
think you could still go back to Superintendent Saunders even after your briefing,
Yeah, because this
and
is
say,
an
"This is
item that's
something
important to me,
I'd
and I would like
like."
to add this.
because she may have the knowledge of saying, "Oh, well, we do that in this way, and we don't really need it to be an item because we didn't know it was done that way," or say, "Yes, we'll put it out there and we'll see what the chair says and then move forward." But again, then that goes back to the same thing what Mr. Tatum was saying. If it's denied and you still really want it, you bring it up at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay,
Say, "Can I add this agenda item?"
I do
But-
mine by email. I just send her an email.
Yeah, as an item. But I would say standard and we're not going to get that a whole lot. where
No.
Monday night, you come across like, "Oh, I need this on the agenda for tomorrow morning." But because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know sometimes. So it's like, "Hey, I want this schools to be painted blue." Ms. Saunders says, "We already got that on the agenda. We're going to bring that up next week." And then it's like, "Okay, well, I don't need to add it on this week." So I don't think there's ever been a time me that I've been like, "Oh, I got to add this on a Saturday night." I'm sitting at home thinking about it. So I don't think it happens too.
But Ms. Bray, you can, a lot like Ms. Foreman said, even if you didn't get a chance to go over it in my briefing, you can email me, you can ask me to call, so we can discuss that at other times. But if you know it in advance when you're there, you know, that's usually.
yeah, we covered a lot in the
Yeah,
briefing
we
yesterday,
did.
so, and it was one of those things that, okay, once I got home, I'm like, oh darn.
Sure, but you can send me an email.
It was a long day, so, okay.
We've already talked about the using the Granicus system for the raising of the hand. And Miss Means, did you get my email that I sent to you? Do you think that the reason why I cannot exit stuff out is because maybe it lists? Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. I know there was some issue of like, once you spoke, it doesn't clear you out.
Yeah.
And I can't clear you out. My thinking was, am I labeled as chair so I can have that access to cancel people out? Okay, that's, yeah,
I have
no
a question
worries.
about
Yes, ma'am.
Granicus. Is there a way to set our default to 100%? Because when I bring up, it's 20%, and then I got to go through all kinds of gyrations to get it up to 100.
That's the request we made with the company. They're supposed to issue an update sometime this year. And
Software update.
All right, thanks.
I think we did. I think we talked about that when we first got this system. That was still an issue back then.
Yeah,
It's
it drives me
tiny.
crazy.
Yeah, that's why I use the other window. I open up another window to use. Yeah.
I guess I'm not sure what we're talking about there. The system right here when you're talking.
Yeah, the Granicus system. If you click the agenda and you
Yeah.
bring up the attachment, it's real small.
Hard, it's so hard, yeah.
I usually open up Microsoft Edge and have
Okay,
have
I
the
gotcha. 'Cause-
district's
yeah.
window open. So, yeah.
All right,
First world problems, unfortunately. Okay, so then last two things, and this is again in the thought of moving a meeting and making it efficient, things like that. The two things, and I don't know why it was done this way, but I know the county commission does not do it this way. Is I found it very. I know why we did the board policy about public comment. I understand the reason why reading that. I am going to, I would, when I say they, when a public comment signs up online the way they do, we've already checked with the way can be physically done. This has already been, says yes, we can do it technology-wise. But when they go through and they click their name and all that kind of stuff for public comment, there is going to be do you say an attestation? I think that's the word, saying where you click on yes, that I read the board policy. And the board policy for public comment will be on that page for public comment when you sign up. So that we don't have to spend 2 or 3 minutes reading it every single meeting. So it's going to be on there when you read it, or when you signed up for public comment, you were saying check yes. I was about to sing a song, but check yes that I read the policies. When you click enter, that is you saying you know what the policies are when you're doing public comment. No profanity, no swearing, etc. Right? And then on the second part of that is, I'm going to continue to run. I want to run public comment instead of it going to the vice chair. And not anything against the vice chair, but I feel like has always been a kind of a back and forth shuffle. I don't know when we decided to do the vice chair be the public comment. I don't know, but the city does it, the county commission does it, the chair leads it. I just think it will flow much quicker instead of having to go back and say, vice chair, you're doing it, now I'm doing it, you're doing it. And so, especially with public comment or public hearings, and Ms. Messer, you brought it up that as a chair, I may be able to control those public comments on the voting items. And so your thought process was good on that. So, so those two things, and what was the camera, by the way, has changed. We're good. We can split screen. There was one more thing.
Yeah, Chairman.
But yep, absolutely.
I just
Talk about
want to say
what I
that
think.
the board has had that conversation before about the chair, vice chair, because there are lots of entities that do it differently. There's even other school boards that do it differently, and that was really, I don't know who started that. It's always been like that since I've been here in the 6 years I've been here. So I think that it will make it smoother.
I did talk about it in my chairmanship. I asked some people around me, like, what do you guys do? And all their chair, typically, all of them said their chair did it.
Yeah.
There was one more thing.
Can I add to?
Yes, you can add to
Saying
something while
then
I'm
once-
thinking.
You're saying then, once the public commenter signs up to speak, we no longer have to read this document.
Correct. So that document, that public comment is not open forum to discuss matters unrelated to
Right.
education. That is going to be on this page that they sign up. And it's going to be, you cannot click submit your name until you click the box that says I read it. Now, maybe they didn't read it, but that's not the point. The point is, I'm assuming they read it. So when they break this, that's your break.
All right.
You said you read it. Whether you did or not, that's on you. That's your warning. You do it again. See you later.
I 100% support all of what you just said. I have one question. There are times where people come, they do not have the technology, so they come to our meeting and sign up by
It'll be
card.
printed out up there for them to read
Okay.
beforehand.
And check the box.
Okay.
And to check.
That's my only
whether
concern
they're
with that, is
accurate.
somebody that does not have the financial means to have this technology. I don't want that to be a hindrance for them understanding what they're agreeing to.
And then I will say too, some other questions as we're sitting here discussing this, and this did not come up in my meetings with Ms. Beans about this procedure. Public hearing. Public hearing is anybody can come up and talk. You don't have to sign up.
Right.
So we are going to, so maybe this is not my answer to it. We are going to keep the verbiage of the policy on the agenda. So I don't know if what the board believe, and this did not come up in my whole thinking about everything. Do we need to say it for public hearing? I personally believe it's on the agenda. It can say, look, our public policy is on the agenda. Please read that before you come up and
Right.
speak. And that's their warning. I don't think we need to read that for 3 or 4 minutes
No.
every meeting. I mean, we're all adults.
Yeah, I mean, my other suggestion I had put on my list was at least making it into a video so it's not so.
That was going to be my first thought.
So that was my other
Instead
suggestion.
of someone reading it, do a video.
I mean, there's something valid there with a public hearing and maybe not. I mean, it's kind of a different circumstance than somebody signing up.
Yeah.
But there, if you note it, perhaps.
And
And
then
to
I
her
do know.
point of somebody coming in that does not have the technology, we have the form for them to sign up that gives us their name.
Yeah.
They could be given, and you're saying it's gonna be printed on the
Yeah, it'll
agenda
be up there for
anyway,
them. Yeah.
but it would be printed for
And
them.
we'll have that, just the public comment policy, we will have that up there when they sign
When
up.
right,
Absolutely.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, good,
Yep.
good.
So that everybody sees it.
I mean, even little half sheets, I
Oh,
would
yeah.
say,
I
Make
still
little
want the
half sheets
Star
instead.
Wars version
yeah.
to scroll on the screen.
That's not read out loud, so we need someone with a very dramatic voice to
We
read.
need to like go
Well,
get,
no, we don't need to read it, just, you know, instead of handing them a piece of paper, we have.
everybody
them
may get
scroll.
excited that we're about to start like, Return of the Jedi. The last thing is, is, and again, remember, this is all in trying to be efficient during the meetings. I'm all for a public commentor coming up with an illustration, something to show us, hey, the driveway at Witt Elementary is awful. Here's a picture of it at drop off. Whatever the item is that they want to show and project to us.
Why you gotta pick
I
on
made
Witt?
up. I made up a school, and so, and again, in trying to keep this efficient, I would, and I don't know if now thinking about this more legally, Mr. Dye did believe this was okay, but I would like to create, if you were going to have it available that you are able to email, and we're going to, Ms. Means and I discussed having an address that they send this to, public comment, 24 hours before the meeting so that we can put it into the system. It's already vetted and it's ready to go. When Chad Choate comes up to talk about it, they're in the system, they have it, it's ready, it's on the screen, and you're ready to roll. Not, can I get this on? Oh, I got to get it looked at. Oh, is my time running? Oh, my time's not running. And now we've gone a minute and a half by just kind of sitting here waiting for a piece of paper to be put in the computer system. So if you know you're coming to do a public comment, you know, we can even shrink it really to be 24 hours just the day before. You could do it at 11 o'clock if it's a 5 o'clock meeting on a Tuesday. But that way the email is vetted. And the reason why we got, in my personal opinion, why we've ever vetted anything that was put up on the screen talking with Mr. Dye is, this is, you know, you can't put a picture of a group of class kids if those kids don't sign off on that. And so we're really doing it to protect ourselves from potential issues. And I want the commenters, public commenters, if they have something to show, I want them to show it. I just want it to work efficiently. And I feel like we are very clunky with that. The reason why we don't just put an overhead up there and let them go is because it's got to be vetted. And again, I bring that up because of an item I just told you with a picture of a classroom or something, and that child's parents don't want their kid's picture out. So I would say we said 24 hours before the meeting. If you have a handout, scan that in to the email and email it. If you don't have that capability, drop it off at the front office. But that way we can vet it. The attorneys can vet it. The staff can put it into the computer system. And then it flawlessly moves forward as so-and-so comes up to speak. Their item is projected and it's good to go. Thoughts?
Does that apply
Concerns,
to
outbursts?
Mr. Nelson's multi-page? Because he's not trying to get it up on the screen, he's trying to get it in front of us.
Anything that would be directly to like a board member, no, I'm okay with, like, that doesn't want to be projected. That's okay just to hand to us. That I think is different. What I think is that he can give to Miss Means like normal and she can put it out there. And if someone wants to make a bunch of copies but again, Mr. Nelson comes up and has that vetted right away before he does anything else. So he when he comes in, he gives it right to Mr. Dye instead of waiting for when you actually come up to then give that forward, you know. But he could very well just send it now, like he does the Army email, send it to that public comment email, and we'll get that out there and make sure that's publicized. But again, for me, it's efficiency, and I want this stuff on there, and I want you to be able to project your thoughts, you know, a diagram or whatever you've got. But I don't want it to take a minute and a half for each person, and now it's 7-8 minutes that have gone by for nothing. And we could have easily, in the 21st century, we could easily fix that. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that one.
With that?
Yeah, because I agree with you. It was timely.
Yeah, I mean, it just breaks up it just stops the flow of the meeting. And that's it. That's all I got. So, just to recap, I would definitely get back with you guys on the days for workshops, whether Friday or Wednesdays morning. With it being in room 203, we'll finalize that as well after talking with Ms. Saunders and getting that finalized. Other than that, if there's no other comments, we are adjourned.
I have one quick comment.
Yep.
So I want to thank Mrs. Foreman for bringing up the issues about financial accountability and keep us informed of what's going on, like with the healthcare. If there's something you see in a financial report that I guess you can only do that at a public meeting because of sunshine, but maybe some of us aren't as wise on that stuff. So I would like, if you see something, please bring it to my attention at a public meeting, because it's something as a lay person, not a CPA, I may not, recognize it or see it. So
Shyness is not my,
okay.
not a problem for
To
me.
interject, you can always, and so she could do that. Let's say she's highlighting something on a report. She can send that to Ms. Means to then give out to everybody else.
Yeah, that would be great.
So there is a way to do that, and so can you. Obviously, that's a way to kind of get around. It's still public, where you're not directly talking to us about here's this item.
Okay.
So anyways, just let you know.
And I wanted to thank you, the staff for their patience, as well as board members and staff, because the new people up here, I'm just trying to get informed about a lot of stuff, so I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. And I tried to limit myself today. I realized that I had a bunch of questions. The things I can just discuss with the staff, I will, but to indulge their patience. And then as far as, do we get an all-access pass, by the way? We were talking about getting into school as board members, because I was doing my felt deliveries the other day, and I just tried to buzz myself in with my pass, and I couldn't get into the school. But is that...
You still have to go through the front office.
Okay.
But once you get in, you're cleared because you've already had the Jessica Lunsford and so forth.
We can't buzz ourselves in the door.
Including the superintendent. I can't just buzz myself in. I have to ring the buzzer, they let me in, and I sign in so that they know I'm on campus. But I'm able to be on campus because we've gone through all the clearance, and you're able to walk around and address whatever you need to address. But you still have to go through the front.
Okay. And the last comment I had was for the public and the staff and everybody too, is some questions that I ask may seem like they're not important, or I have some type of agenda behind it, but it's really not. A lot of times it's actually questions from the public that have come up. Like people have said about Neola. They said, what are you paying that organization for? Don't you have lawyers on staff? How much is it costing you? And so I'll ask that question, and it's not because I don't think Neola is a good idea or something. It's just I would like to have more information.
We do
when I
have
go
the
out to the public.
invoices. We'll send you, they bill us monthly based on what load of vetting that they're doing on policy. I think what I had to date this year is about $29,000.
Okay, that's good. That's all I had. Thank you for that extra minute.
May I give a suggestion? Because I try to do this so that I ask the question of the person before the workshop. And like I did that with Mr. Wagner, I called and I said, these are my questions, and he may be able to have that answer. I'm still going to ask it at the workshop, okay, for the public's benefit. I know the answer, usually, sometimes, occasionally, but it's a helpful way to do that.
Yeah,
And it's, that way we're not playing gotcha with the staff.
Great suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
just want to say thanks again to all the staff too for my onboarding. It's been a whirlwind, talking to every department, and Mr. Rinaldi, I'm asked to talk to the mechanics at the Manatee Center, because that's kind of my background too. So it's just not the business side of things, it's actually the physical work side of things that I like to see too. So I do want to thank the staff. They've done a great job in giving us the things we need. And that's all I have.
You good? All right. Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.